evening. I would like to call this meeting of August 22nd, 2024 to order. Roll call, please, Ms. Arvada.
Ms. Applegate?
Here.
Ms. Kenworthy?
Here.
Ms. Parker?
Here.
Ms. Reed?
Here.
Dr. Varda?
I'd like to thank our live simultaneous Spanish interpreters for joining us today, and we're also live streaming our meeting. Please stand and join us this afternoon in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve today's meeting agenda?
I motion to approve today's agenda as presented in board docs.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for today's meeting of August 22nd, 2024 as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Arvada.
Ms. Applegate?
Yes.
Ms. Kenworthy?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
The agenda is approved. I want to take this opportunity to welcome board members back from summer break and welcome all Jeffco students, families, and staff to the 2024-25 school year. The year is off to a great start, and it's great to be here getting back to work as a school board. I want to acknowledge at the start of our meeting tonight that in addition to our items for study, the board will be voting on the ratified agreement reached last month with Jeffco Education Support Professionals Association, known as JESPA. While the board typically takes action at its regular meetings, there are times when action is noticed to occur during a study session. We will vote tonight in a timely manner to honor the work completed by the district and association negotiation teams ratified by JESPA members on July 3rd. With that, let's turn to our first agenda item this evening, board action on the JESPA negotiated agreement. As I mentioned, the district and the Jeffco Education Support Professionals Association negotiation teams reached an agreement on compensation and benefits for classified support professionals for the 2024-25 school year. The terms of the agreement are provided in the materials presented in board docs. Is there a motion to approve the tentative agreement and revised contract language between the Jeffco Education Support Professionals Association and the district?
I move to approve the proposed contract as presented in board docs reflecting the tentative agreement negotiated between the Jeffco Education Support Professionals Association and the district.
Is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? It's been moved and seconded that the board will approve the contract as presented in board docs. Roll call, please, Ms. Arvada.
Ms. Applegate?
Yes.
Ms. Kenworthy?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
Okay, that contract is approved. We'll now move to our study session agenda and on to the topic of District Enterprise Resource Planning Replacement Project. That's a mouthful. The purpose of this topic is for the board and the public to receive a presentation from independent consultant Barry Dunn and district staff on Jeffco Horizon, the Enterprise Resource Planning or ERP Replacement Project. Beginning in July 2023, independent consultant Barry Dunn began work with district staff to analyze business processes and to identify key replacement priorities for the ERP replacement project. Outlined in Jeffco Thrives 2025 as a major initiative, Jeffco Horizon will automate and modernize core business processes for optimal performance across finance, budgeting, payroll, inventory, and all things HR. Ultimately, Jeffco Horizon will promote better communication, collaboration, and efficiency across the district in support of student outcomes. Before I hand this over to district staff, Superintendent Dorland, is there anything you would like to say?
Thank you, President Parker. I'm really excited about this project. And to your point, it's a bit of a mouthful if you say Enterprise Resource Program Planning. So we had a naming contest. And the naming contest landed with Jeffco Horizon, which I think is a much better name. So appreciate everyone who participated in that process. And I do really like the name Jeffco Horizon. You know, this project is a pretty big project. both financially as well as time commitment and complicated based on the fact that it's based on and will define all of our business processes. It's closely aligned to our operations, our foundation, and outlined in Jeffco Thrives in that section of our strategic plan. And it is 100% in alignment with central services in support of student outcomes, which is our second major priority for this school year. The more efficient, effective our central services can be, the more focus our academic leaders and educators can spend more time focusing on our students, our learners, our future. So we're really excited about this project. It's going to be a huge lift, but also a huge improvement for our operations teams and our operation functions. And with that, I'm handing it over to Ms. Ibeck. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Board of Education, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, Superintendent Dorland. As Superintendent Dorland mentioned, we have chosen the name Jeffco Horizon, Shaping Tomorrow's Enterprise, which is, of course, a fancy name for our ERP system replacement product. And so, Drew, if you could, thanks. And so to start with some introductions, I'm going to look to my left, and we will go with Mr. Williams first.
Hi there, Matt Williams, Director of Business Technology Services on the IT team.
Hi, Jill Ibeck, Chief Information Officer.
Brenna Copeland, Chief Financial Officer.
Brian Hansen, Assistant Director of Strategic Initiatives and ERP Program Manager, which is Mo.
And as you can see, we have a guest here with us today from Barry Dunn, and we're going to hold off on introductions for Mr. Ledbetter for just a moment because he has a slide to introduce himself to you. But talking about the purpose of our presentation today, it's to update the board about our district's ERP project. We are going to work to introduce Barry Dunn. We're going to talk a little bit more about what the ERP system is and why we are making this change, our objectives of making this change, the steps that we have already taken and will be taken to prepare for such a large district change, as the superintendent mentioned, and a little bit about our timeline of when this change will be happening. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Ledbetter from Barry Dunn.
Good afternoon, everyone. David Ledbetter here with Barry Dunn. First and foremost, I want to apologize for not being there in person. That was my plan. However, my 2-year-old son brought home a little bit of illness, and I decided I'd rather not share that with you all, as he shared it with me. So as you can see on the slide, I am one of 3 of the project leadership team by Barry Dunn. A little bit about us. First and foremost, we started off as a private sector CPA firm 50 years ago. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary. In the mid-'80s, we started doing local government and school district consulting, and now that is our largest practice. So Ryan and myself lead the initiatives out in the West, and I've had the privilege of working with the district since we started our project. And I guess 2 takeaways that I would like to really announce is that Barry Dunn is not affiliated in any way, shape, or form with any software vendor. We are entirely impartial. So as we've been working with the district, any advice that we've given along the way is in the district's best interest. But we still maintain close affiliation with school districts and other folks in the public sector through our Barry Dunn Bridge program to really stay up to date on all the current trends. And it has been really my pleasure and Ryan's wanted to just really focus on the fact that we've had a great experience partnering with the district, and it really has been a true partnership. So with that, I'll turn it back to Jill.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. A very familiar slide here to us all is about how this project aligns with our Jeffco Thrives 2025 strategic plan. The goal overall that we're calling this project to be within is called Modernizing Business Processes and Systems. And as we think about our alignment with our strategic plan and we think through our vision, our mission, our values, our 4 priority areas, we come to our major initiatives. And of course, major initiative being student outcomes. Major initiative 2 here circled in red aligns with this project of modernizing business processes and systems alongside central services in support of student outcomes. And so a little bit more about what is Jeffco's ERP system. And so ERP, as we've talked about a few times today, stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. It's a little bit of a mouthful, hence the naming competition. And what the ERP system is largely here at Jeffco is it's a system that helps us organize, automate, and manage our core business processes for optimization and performance across many different functional areas, such as finance, budgeting, payroll, inventory, all things HR, and some operational processes as well. An ERP system is our single source of truth for our employee system of record or employee information system, and it ensures that everyone in the organization can access what they need and when they need it. Ultimately, we are looking forward to a new modern system promoting better communication, collaboration, and efficiency across our entire district. And so the current system that we are using here at the district is called Oracle PeopleSoft, and we've been using it for over 25 years. It's the primary application spanning those same functional organizations of HR, finance, and some operations processes. The company called Oracle purchased PeopleSoft as a product in the early 2000s, specifically right around 2003. And it's what's considered to be an on-premise application. And so what on-premise means is that the system is installed here on site, and it takes a team of technical resources to maintain not just this data center here at the Ed Center, which is just on the other side of this wall, but replicating that same system over to Quail for redundancy as well. So it's a lot of work between multiple teams to maintain the system. The HR, finance, and operations departments primarily own the people, processes, and data that drive how the system is maintained on a day-to-day basis. And the technical team or the IT department maintains our support and various components of PeopleSoft, such as the application, patches to the application, upgrades to the application, the platform, and of course, once again, the hardware. And so we haven't been running the same version for 25 years. We've been maintaining it, patching it, upgrading, which is a laborious effort. Okay, and for our objectives of making this change, I'll lead us in here, and then I will ask if my colleague, Ms. Copeland, would like to talk about our benefits to schools. And so our top priority is to align the people, processes, and technology. Once again, so those three major areas of HR, finance, and operations functions are efficient and effective, ultimately creating time for all staff to support our schools, teachers, and students. I should say more time to support our schools, teachers, and students. And so how some of those benefits might lay out at the school and central services, we want to talk through with you all.
Great. And I do want to apologize. I think I showed up to talk about technology and software with this instead of a computer like my colleagues. But I am really excited about ERP, and part of the reason is schools have told us that we need a better, more efficient process to hire, and then also to make position changes during the school year. And I do think that the staffing aspects, staffing management will be a really big benefit. Some of what we've already demoed is an amazing sort of talent recruitment interface that I think my colleagues in HR are excited about. This notion of self-service, really the empowering and the access, the mobile capabilities, we think it'll actually be much easier for our employees to enter their time, to do time approvals for one another, to sign up for their benefits, et cetera. And so I do think while it won't be a big shift in their day-to-day work, it will be one less thing that's kind of complicated and confusing, and hopefully one more thing that feels welcoming to new folks and easy and reassuring to returning folks. And I'm going to hand it back to Jill.
When we think about our benefits to our central services team, of course, one of the first things that we think about is data. The opportunity surrounding data mirrors much of the work done within the purview of the Jeffco Thrive strategic plan, which is focused on, of course, data modernization, data integrity and quality, and data literacy, all leading our organization to make better data-driven decisions and insights. This system change will benefit from that same line of thinking as we look forward to improved reporting functionality. Our current system being installed on-premise means that we have a team of technical staff who maintain the system, and we experience what are called both planned and unplanned outages. Modern SaaS, or software as a service, or cloud, is what we sometimes call that. These modern-based platforms utilize modern technology that ensure more reliability and system uptime, often offering 24/7 availability, which we are unable to match with our current on-premise systems. End users of our current system have reported manual workarounds and maintaining data in spreadsheets. From a data security perspective, this is not ideal, as having copies of data external to the secure system of record creates additional risk on top of data sets that quickly become stale and outdated. A more usable modern system will eliminate this risk and help us increase our automation opportunities. One of the principles of this project that we've been speaking about together as a project team is favoring what's called system configuration over customization. Configuring an enterprise system is ideal as it is less invasive to the overall code base of the product, and it's much easier to maintain through upgrades and regulatory patching. This is a more sustainable approach and option that will meet the changing needs of our district.
All right, so a little bit more about why now. I think there's a pretty compelling kind of rationale, but then like why this moment? We are reaching the end of life, and Jill actually knows more about this than I do, but Oracle will stop supporting PeopleSoft at a certain point in time for our version of PeopleSoft, if you will. And potentially by 2030, is that still approximately right?
That's our last update from the vendor. It does tend to change, but right now that is our last update.
Great. So another kind of why now is just we do actually need to simplify some of our lots of different systems, because that has become a barrier. I know, at least in my role, part of the challenge over the last 3 years has been a system over here is potentially doing a project management function, or a system over here is doing a people management function, and the financials are in a different place. And so even just importing payroll, very difficult. Having all of our capital expenditures over here and then having to import that also creates issues. So this idea of just consolidation is not only going to make it more effective, more accurate, more trustworthy, but also, I think we'll be able to shift away from a handful of third-party integrations, I think, fingers crossed, because some of these systems can do more things at once. So, for example, the system over here that's handling some of our project management and construction work may actually be inside a future ERP. Could be. And then process improvement. This is my favorite one, and the one my team is most excited about. We really do want to improve processes, and they have a list of things that they want to do better and different. And sometimes the answer is honestly, well, we would have to change PeopleSoft to do that. And do we want to invest time and resources in changing a product that's going away? And so going ahead and switching the ERP means we can kind of unleash the potential of some really important process improvement that's otherwise a little bit difficult to put in place. So I'm excited about that. I go next. Timeline. Colors. So we released our RFP. And by the way, Brett Adams, who's my director of procurement, I want to give him a quick shout out. He's really done some cool work. I know he's not here tonight, but he's a great. Oh, jeez. I didn't see you. That's Brett. I want to give him a quick shout out because he's really done some amazing work. Thank you, Brett. To launch our RFP, which did go out right at the end of June or beginning of July. I don't remember the exact date. But that RFP was actually built on a whole lot of pre-work, and I think that you might hear just a little bit more about that as Barry Dunn is talking about some of the things that we've already accomplished. But nonetheless, the RFP defined our requirements. It talked about what do we have in place already for program management versus what do we need someone else to do kind of alongside of us, et cetera. And then we'll be assessing vendors. July may have been ambitious. The initial proposals are coming in the 28th. Is that right? 29th. Darn it, that was a day off. And so we'll start the assessment process, and Brett has put together an amazing sort of spreadsheet of a different way to engage approximately 70 people in partnership with Brian, who I also want to give a shout out to because he's been phenomenal. But this assessment really matters. And honestly, the most exciting part of this is we don't have to be the experts. It's the people who use the system every day that have the real knowledge that we need to apply in order to figure out whether a new product can meet our needs. And luckily, they were very integral to the needs assessment, and now they'll be integral to selecting our future system. And we will take some time to do that, and then contract negotiations. And by February, our goal is to really be starting the project. The horizon, Jeffco Horizon, will be not so far off, and we'll be starting the work. Okay.
All right. Well, I will take it from there to discuss some of the, I'm going to say, the first part of the preparation to get us to the point of getting that RFP on the street that Brett and his team put together. I'd like to echo that Brett has been a fantastic thought partner to go really take this by the reins and get this to where we are today. But our work really started last fall. We had a team of staff on site for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, we facilitated 31 different sessions over 15 different functional areas. And coming from that, from our needs assessment phase, we were able to diagram and map out 101 processes at that time. We've done a few more since then to document current state. With that, we created a needs assessment gap analysis report. The idea there is that we were really going in depth to the business users of this software, what they use, not only PeopleSoft for, but any other third-party application. So what tools and technology support the business processes that we're looking to transform going into the future. And with that, we documented 109 challenges and opportunities for improvement as part of that report. In addition to that, the next point on this slide is talking about something that we've deemed called accelerated processes. And these were areas with, as you've heard so far, this is a rather large lift for district staff. And there were a number of areas that we identified that could be looked at ahead of selection, meaning that a selection of a specific vendor would not impact assessing these processes and really examining them, making them better going into a new ERP program, really just getting the house in order, so to speak, as we move forward. And staff has been working on a separate initiative working on that. In addition to this work, and I know district staff will highlight this as well, but lots of peer-to-peer discussions been happening with, trying to document lessons learned, leveraging the resources that Barry done, but also colleagues that have been through this and what would they do differently? How would they tool up for an initiative of this size? And then we'll talk more about it, but really one of the first areas that we got to look at was initial RFI responses and what we call outreach demos that gave a good number of staff really a chance to look at software and what modern capabilities are available to really get their minds thinking future state and what some possibilities we'll have in new software systems. With that, I'll turn it back to district staff for some of the other points.
So as part of the rollout and change management effort around this entire project, we started by reaching out to our staff and educating them on the ongoings of the project. And one of the things that was rather fun that we did was a Central Services Lunch and Learn. It was sold out, emphasizing that lunch was part of the Lunch and Learn. But we did hold that, and we recorded it, and we look forward to offering more of those soon. I really want to commend the cabinet team overall with regard to the support that the cabinet team has had for this project. With the cabinet team's support, we have been able to take team by team messaging and mobilization of what this means for each individual division and how this is going to impact our staff. We have hired an ERP program manager. That's, of course, Mr. Hansen here with us today. We have started and are beginning to explore future state functional and technical requirements. And so Mr. Ledbetter talked about a gap analysis to understand our current state, and we're doing work to understand our future state so we understand what that gap analysis will yield. And that gap analysis, of course, will inform our RFP, our approach, and our project steps overall. And the RFP, as you heard from Brenna, has been posted, and that is posted for bid. And we have also completed GFOA ERP training, if you want to elaborate on that.
It just stands for Government Financial Officers Association. It's not just for financial officers. They do really great supports across IT professionals, operational professionals, but everyone working in government. And they do have a real strength around ERP implementations because a lot of governments have gone through this recently. Sorry, David, I didn't do a very good handoff right there. I think we're back to you.
I don't need a handoff. I can only see the slides that are on the screen, so I'm really squinting to look at them. But in terms of one area that we partnered with Brett and his staff was creating an RFI, and I mentioned those vendor outreach sessions. As part of the RFI, you'll notice on the bottom of the slide that we received 7 responses to the RFI, but we only saw 4 software demos. The reason why I want to call that out is in the market today, there are what we call system integrators that respond on behalf of the software vendor in some cases, or maybe in partnership with the software vendor. So we received responses 3 from Oracle, 2 being different system integrators and 1 being Oracle proper. One differentiator being that the system integrator often has a niche in a certain area of the market, whether that be geographically or in a specific area of business being public schools. When we were looking at areas to focus on for the RFI, there were really 5 major areas, one being the availability of modules, meaning what software suite do they offer. We were really there looking for a full ERP suite, or are they offering just a best-of-breed software product? Within those modules that they offer, what's the level of functionality? So we didn't go into in-depth functional and technical requirements like we did on the RFP. We did do high level just to see how mature the system really was on the marketplace. We listed potential interfaces. We've talked about third-party systems and other software that's being used as really just seeing if these vendors on the market have either replaced or integrated with some of the other systems that are currently in use by the district. An implementation timeline, and really what we were seeing here was what our options were for not only in terms of phasing, meaning which set of modules would go first, but an overall timeline for an initiative of this magnitude and what the vendor would see knowing what they know about Jeffco. And then lastly, a high-level cost determination for both ongoing recurring costs in terms of software subscription, as well as one-time costs from an implementation standpoint. So those were all captured and then brought together to see the software demos in the vendor outreach session. I'll let district staff chime in if they have anything they'd like to add.
Okay. Thank you so much. And so coming back again, we've sort of been going back and forth in the timeline, but here we are again to where are we in the RFP process? And the punchline of this slide is good news. It's been a very competitive process in which a number of folks have expressed interest. So that makes me heartened because I think we're going to get a good deal. 3,800 plus vendors notified, 210 downloaded the RFP, 41 people from 21 vendors attended our Q&A. All of the folks we hoped would show up have shown up, and 15 vendors have submitted follow-up questions indicating further interest. So that's a strong process. Next slide. A little bit more about how we will evaluate and who's involved. So the RFP review team, these folks are poised to launch the work. I'm going to actually go from the bottom up. We have some process advisors, folks like Barry Dunn. We're going to continue to work a little bit with GFOA, but they're going to assist with some of the planning and facilitation, vendor Q&A, et cetera. SME review teams. These are people in Jeffco who are very much subject matter experts in their area. They're going to do the full technical review. And this is not just one technical review. It's like 100 different things, and each person has certain things they're going to look at. It is quite complicated. But that will make sure that we get lots of input from the right folks in terms of that technical review. The scoring committee has the unenviable task of trying to assimilate that technical review and evaluate a little bit more across the board. That feedback from the SMEs, as well as other bid scoring components of, obviously, competitiveness is going to be a thing, but timeline is a thing. There's lots of different criteria. Should I not have said that? Did I just give it away? Sorry to mess it up. And then our procurement lead ensures the integrity of the process, as well as some of the folks on his team. And then ultimately, the ERP leadership team will certify the results and recommendations for the product selection and the vendor selection for an implementation partner. Next. Oh, costs. So we shared some of this in the budget presentation this spring because obviously we needed to budget an appropriation for a portion of the costs for the current year as we anticipated spending that. Still a very rough estimate because we don't have those bids in hand yet, but the rough estimate is approximately $26 million over 3 years. On the left-hand side, you see some anticipated largely internal costs, and that's paying stipends or additional staff to support this work. Middle column is what are we going to pay for the actual software while we're implementing it, and any other systems that we may need to invest in to do this, right? Again, green box is really more Jill's world. She knows what should go in there. Final column on the right is contracted services. This will be our implementation partner, potentially an external project manager or strategic change support that isn't specifically in the RFP document, so I don't think, right? Yeah. So a little bit more of a TBD there. Some interface builds if we need those, and some data conversion, which is really important to me because we need to actually import all of our financial data from at least 2 years into the new system. And also, you guys know this, we're implementing a new chart of accounts. And so it's converting first into one thing and then into a new system. Oh my God, see, that's the excitement I'm looking for right there. Can't wait for the new chart of accounts. Okay, let's talk about next steps. There's the August 29th date, September 20th. Fingers crossed, our technical review of bids will be complete. By late October, we have some placeholders on calendars for vendor demonstrations. November and December, we expect to be negotiating some contract terms. December 16th is our goal. That's a very specific date for an intent to award. And then December or January, we want to come back around and share more information and do that in advance of seeking your approval on a contract. And then begin the implementation in February. And I believe that is our last slide. So now let's have some questions.
Thank you so much. Board, do you have questions, comments, anyone?
Thanks. It's exciting to see all this. On the budget, I think we've asked this before, but I can't remember the answer. But what are our costs now, and how does this compare? Is this an increased budget? Are we having to, and is it already in the budget? I'm assuming.
Really good questions. Thank you. So a lot of what's on that slide, do you mind if we go back for a second to the 26 million? From kind of like an investment lens or an accounting lens, we kind of think of most of this as one-time costs. And so we only have to do this once. And then we can be in a cycle where we're just paying subscription fees and any external maintenance. There are a couple different products on the market and not dissimilar to other types of software as a service systems. In some, you might end up paying a little bit more upfront and a little bit less annually, or in some you might pay a little bit more annually and a little bit less upfront. And we even saw that in some of our RFI responses. At the moment, I feel very comfortable in saying that overall, when you look at the totality of the business process improvement that we're we're striving for. That's really the purpose here. That this is going to save us resources. It's going to save us time resources. It's going to save us money resources. Exactly how that plays out in terms of the annual cost, I can't quite answer that yet, but that's part of our evaluative criteria.
I'd like to add to that. I actually remember this question from before, and one of the things to note is the way that our software, our current system is installed in a way where we just see licensing costs, but we don't see some of the hardware costs that come through from a total cost of ownership perspective. And so to get to an apples or oranges and oranges comparison, it's going to take us a little bit longer through the process of the RFP to understand exactly the comparative data there.
Thank you. This is exciting, and it's something that I hope brings a lot of value to the district. Just a few clarifying questions. I think you covered it, but I want to make sure I understand. So I know our current system's on premise, but we are trying to move to the cloud or a SaaS system.
Okay, that's correct.
And then will we still be able to maintain in-house folks with that expertise in those systems, or would we be relying on the vendor, or is that up to be decided on the RFP?
This is a wonderful question. And so, as you likely heard many times throughout the course of the presentation, we have a robust internal staff, not just IT, but Brenna's team, HR, finance, and operations functions. And so with a new product, there will be less technical support needed. What we hope to understand with those resources, as those resources are reabsorbed into the organization, and perhaps looking at different functions to support the system. And so there are absolutely one-time costs, but we hope to use our internal staff to maintain it once we are in operational mode and we have transitioned to operational service.
Great. Last question. When we're thinking about the gap analysis, I assume that gap analysis is also like, do we have enough servers? Do we have all the correct hardware? Are any of those maybe costs in this estimated project, or are those things that we might need to add?
That's a wonderful question. And so when we think about a modern product, one of the things that's going to help me sleep at night is we are not maintaining any of that hardware any longer. And so today we are actually, if we were to go on a data center tour together, which some of you have went on with me before, you'll see, large pieces of equipment, and all of that costs money to maintain, to cool, to power on a daily basis. So one of the things we get to look forward to is we don't have to maintain that any longer. And that system uptime that I spoke about, that 24/7 availability, is also another benefit to being able to rely on a cloud provider. And so those costs are actually wrapped up in the product at a later time, where once again that TCO right now is unknown because we're sharing a large piece of hardware equipment with other applications.
Cool. Thank you so much.
I have a few questions. This brings me back to my old job, but things have really gotten bigger. When you talk about 210 vendors, when I was in the business of payroll systems or accounting systems, there were not. There were 5 vendors. But a couple questions. One of your slides, on slide 6, it talks about configuration versus customization. And can you give us some examples of what that will help us with? What things can we do now with that? Will we be able to do with that we can't do now?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one really good example that I can provide is our evaluation system. Present day is what we call a customized bolt-on. So it was built from the ground up, and it was bolted into the base code base of the system. And so as we continued to pay for support and upgrade our systems, the vendor, Oracle and/or PeopleSoft, came out with similar functionality after we had built our bolt-on. We did not adopt that functionality at that time. That's called digital transformation. And so because of that, we have these very large bolt-ons that are custom that we continue to maintain as we upgrade the system. And so going back to my comment about configuration over customization, configuration is typically more durable through upgrades and updates, whereas customization needs to be recoded, retested, and go through an entire testing cycle before we can promote it. And so we're looking forward to a more streamlined approach.
Great. Also, again, getting back to the idea that there are 210 vendors, which just blows my mind. Of those hundreds of vendors, do they all offer everything we're looking for, or some of them really more specific in one area, and so it'll be easy to determine that they won't satisfy what our needs, or would we combine vendors, or what's the plan with that?
I think I'll start, and then also, David, I'd love for you to chime in, because I think this is an area that Barry Dunn's been really helpful to us, is figuring out the space, because there's a lot of players. No, 210 vendors is not the same as like 210 different systems. Brenna speak, and I'm not as smart as some of these other people. I think there's like 4 or 5 systems-ish. And then there's a lot of people who might help implement it, or the system itself might say, here, you can buy this from us, but you still need an implementation partner, et cetera. And so I think it's going to be a manageable lift to evaluate. And honestly, again, some of the demos we did and the RFI process in general got us much better at articulating what we needed, and also helped us like use the time between now and then to figure out what criteria we might use to assess the vendor. But David, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about this mass throng of folks that are so interested in working.
Absolutely. You know, that the number 210, saying the vendors have downloaded the RFP. I think Brenna referred to it as Brenna speak. I don't have too much more to clarify on, but a number of those may be those software and system integrators that are proposing on behalf, as well as just folks that our software vendors have. In some cases, when they look at the functional technical requirements, they may look at an area and go, oh, we already know we're a little bit weak here, so we are going to come with a best-of-breed implementation partner for these 3 or 4 functional areas, and those would likely be where that number becomes 210. And really, when it comes down to a highly competitive space that we're seeing in the market today, the proposals can be rather complex with how they're putting those together to fulfill all of the requirements the district has defined in the RFP. Does that clarify the question?
Nods, yes.
Yeah, thank you. That does. And then I'm wondering then, based on what you said, for an implementation partner, we might end up with more than one partner. And is it, no? Because I'm wondering, do the vendors themselves have a support person that they offer with their product? And then is this partner from the vendor or ours?
I'll start, and then Jill, I bet you'll have some to chime in on support unless you'd like to take it.
Please proceed. Thank you.
Okay. I guess first part of the question, typically the system integrator will handle the implementation. If there are any best of breed areas of software present, typically they will leverage parts of their separate implementation teams to handle those specific functional areas. In some cases, that system integrator may act as kind of like a prime contractor, if you will. In terms of support over the long term, there are, I'm going to say, a variety of options. A lot of those integrators provide some level of support over the long term that complement district staff, though it's not always a requirement, or not ever a requirement, rather. It is something that a lot of them offer from a services standpoint, and then the software company will obviously support the software. I'll turn it to district staff to chime in on all.
No, I think I understand. Yep, I appreciate it. This is very, very exciting, and I have visions of all the wonderful things that are going to happen and all the happy people that are going to be emailing us. So anyway, thank you for this, and I look forward to keeping track of what's going on. Thank you. Thank you. All right. The next agenda item is reserved for the board to receive a presentation and have an opportunity to preview the process around 5 charter school renewal applications that we'll consider in November. At this time, the board will also have the opportunity to learn about the Free Horizon Montessori, which is currently a district option school with innovation status and is slated to revert to a charter school. As a reminder to the board and our listening public, the district utilizes a prescribed charter school renewal process and timeline in accordance with Colorado Revised Statute. We will be hearing more about that process tonight. Okay. So we are awaiting the full panel here. I don't know, do you want to, Superintendent Dorland.
Thank you, President Parker. As you know, this is a big year for some of our charter renewals, and so I want to publicly thank our charter schools who the district authorizes for working on their applications, which I know they're already started, and it will be quite a few decisions that the board will need to make about renewals, as you mentioned, President Parker. I want to start by saying that I very much appreciate the board's conversation during the GPO7 policy revisions around their interest in having community input into renewals. And I also want to acknowledge that the DAC has expressed that interest, and I think they're grateful to be able to provide that to the board. I want to share that the charter schools have expressed to us when that is added to the process, one of their interests is in making sure that the role and responsibility of the DAC and the role and responsibility of the staff in advising the board is clearly outlined and articulated so that they know the work they need to put in and what they need to put forward through the process. And so Dr. Adico, Ms. Ferrer, Mr. Weiss have worked really hard to provide structure in format and process for our charter schools. And I just want to thank you for that. As an authorizer, I know our board takes very seriously their role as an authorizing body for our charter schools. And so knowing clear expectations and how we want folks to structure the work, both in content and in process, is extremely helpful. So thank you to our board for their leadership in that space, and thank you to our staff for the work that you've done to get us there. I'm excited for you to share a little bit more with our board and our listening public about where we're headed this year with charter renewals. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Dorland. Yes, so we're here to talk about this year's charter school renewal and new school authorizing. So as required by statute, each charter school must submit a renewal application to their authorizing Board of Education the year prior to their contract expiring. And in that renewal application per statute, they must give information about the school's progress towards their goal and information about the school's finances. In Jeffco, we released the renewal application in April, and they are due October 1st. And the application is organized in 3 sections for academic performance, governance and organizational health, and financial performance. We have 5 schools this year that have contracts expiring next year: Doral Academy, Lincoln Academy, Montessori Peaks Academy, Mountain Phoenix Community School, and Rocky Mountain Deaf School. So as part of our charter renewal process, they are currently preparing the application that they'll submit by October. And then after they submit the application, we will start the staff review. So in that review process, district staff reviews the application against performance frameworks. And then we also seek input from internal departments, for example, safety and security. Alongside our review, the DAC will also review the application and share input through the feedback template that the board provided to them last week. The superintendent will then review the DAC's input and the body of evidence gathered by staff, and then publish her recommendation at least 15 days before the Jeffco vote, which is October 30th. And then we will be back in front of you at the November study session to present the superintendent's recommendations, and then you will vote on those recommendations at the November 14th meeting. Our review process follows Colorado regulation that directs authorizers to obtain a comprehensive body of objective evidence by each school or for each school, and improved academic achievement must be the most important factor to consider when determining whether or not to revoke or renew a charter. And then additionally, authorizing boards are called to not make renewal decisions based on political pressure, community pressure, or solely on the promises of future improvement. That's why our application is looking back over the last years of their current contract. And then we have a new review structure this year, as guided by the board, where the DAC will provide input on charter renewal applications consistent with statute, and they will provide that input directly to the Board of Education and the superintendent. And as directed in the board's directive to the DAC, the DAC will be looking at this section of the Colorado Charter Schools Act, which states that a charter may be revoked or not renewed if the school did one of the following, or any of the following. If the school committed a material violation of the contract, if they failed to meet or make adequate progress toward achievement of the goals in the contract, if the school failed to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, or if they violated any provision of law. So with that guidance, the board has shared a review template with the DAC Charter Subcommittee to help guide their input, as stated by Superintendent Dorland. So the DAC will go through every school, and then they will let you know if they have found that the charter school has committed any of the 4 violations that were discussed on the prior slide. And the DAC can say yes, no, or undetermined for each subpoint, and then provide notes. Now we'll talk about Free Horizon Montessori. So Free Horizon Montessori is a school in Golden. They opened as a charter school in 2002. In 2018, the school approached the district about moving into the Pleasant View facility over here in Golden. And as part of that move to the new facility, the school surrendered its charter contract and converted to a district innovation school, and they also function as an option school. And so they submitted an innovation plan to the board and to the state. And in the state, every innovation plan must be reviewed every 3 years. So their plan was reviewed in 2021. And then now 2024, they are due for review again. Something that's unique about Free Horizon is that they operate under a governance agreement that was signed in 2018 and ratified by the Jeffco Board of Education at that time. And after reviewing the governance agreement, we notified the school earlier this year that we wanted to give notice of termination of the governance agreement, and asked them and shared with them some possible options after the termination of that agreement. So in May, we shared a memo with that board, the Board of Free Horizon, about what the school could look like if they wanted to move forward as an innovation school under a revised governance agreement, or if they wanted to convert back to charter status. And that memo has also been uploaded to board docs. So in June, the board shared with us that they would like to pursue a conversion to a charter school. And given that the school has operated in some form of either innovation school or charter school since 2002, we were able to adapt our new school application so that it looks very similar to our 24-25 renewal application for the school to complete. The Free Horizon Board notified us 2 days ago that they would like to operate on our standard application timeline. So with that, they will submit an application in February, and we will conduct a staff review, and then you, board, will vote in May. And if the application for Free Horizon Montessori Charter School is approved by the board, then the school will spend 25-26 operating as a district option school with an innovation plan, and use that year as a planning year for Free Horizon Charter, which would open August 2026 if approved by the board. Any questions?
Have both the DAC and the charters had a chance to see the DAC templates that we'll be using?
Yes, the template was shared with the DAC Charter Subcommittee Chair last week.
Okay. And because I know we had seen it and it looked good to us, but did they feel pretty positive about
And
it?
shared with the chair of the charter subcommittee at this point, and it's his responsibility to share that with the members of his subcommittee. That's your question, specifically about the people on DAC seeing it. Is that what your question is?
I'm just making sure that both the DAC and the charters feel like this template is some, because I know the charters were concerned that the process wouldn't be as objective and clear as it needed to be, and the DAC wants to make sure that they have input into it. And I just want to make sure that everyone has seen the template and that we're all on the same page feeling like this is a good document to use.
The charters have not seen the template yet, but we had their input in mind when we put the document together.
Okay.
So their input was used in the creation of the document. And so I think that we'll see them week after next. We'll have a meeting with the charter leaders and we'll have an opportunity to share it with them. I anticipate their support without much issue because their feedback was definitely used in the creation of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think you answered this, Dr. Deco, but since Free Horizon Montessori will have 25-26 as a planning year, the part of the agreement where the district provides certain services and supports, that will be maintained through that year. And then will the financial changeover happen at the fiscal year?
Yes, the fiscal year that begins in August 26. But currently the way they operate, they'll have for the next 2 academic years.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. First one is, what's the difference between an option school and an innovation school?
Sure. So innovation status is something that the state allows schools to do. It requires a vote of the staff to move into innovation status. One of the things that it allows schools to do is to work outside the contract, the JCEA contract. Option schools in Jeffco are still a part of our district managed school portfolio, and so they're still bound to the contracts. That's one of the major differences between an innovation school and our neighborhood schools or our option schools. Option schools in Jeffco have existed for a long time because they provide a different type of programming for students. And so you have a school like Devlin or Manning that offer, or Jeffco Open that offer really a program that is different than maybe a typical neighborhood school, but it's not a charter and it's not an innovation school. They still work within the contract of JCEA. They just model the way that they serve students differently. Innovation is a status that they earn, that a school can earn. Free Horizon has that status. They're the only school in Jeffco that has that status right now. So
I'll just add, in addition to components of the negotiated agreement with our associations, there's also opportunities for schools with innovation status to waive some policies and some state laws. And they're kind of all over the map in terms of what these different schools select. It's intended, I think, in its spirit, the state law, to provide for flexibility with innovation status school models. And then the only other thing I would say is that our option schools, in addition to everything Mr. Weiss said, is that they don't have a boundary, right? So there's no boundary that says this is your home school. All schools who are in our option, all students who are in our option schools choice into those schools through our traditional choice processes.
Thank you. And then just one question actually for Tracy and Jennifer. If we have 5 schools that are up for renewal, from my experience in the past, frequently a lot of the parents from those schools would like to do public comment and give their input on it. If we have 5 schools and we would be voting on all 5 of them in November, on November 14th, what would be the plan to have public comment from 5 schools? Can we divide it out over?
I think this is a good question and something we can give some thought to and follow back up with you, President Parker, and hear the board. It wouldn't be uncommon in a situation like this, for example, for a school board to do some extended public comment if you feel like you need it. There are some other things I can think about. People can write in, and we can have some of their comments read. So maybe we can give some thought to that if the board is interested in us making sure that we have a little bit of an time for more than just typical public comment in that meeting. And then we can come back to you with some ideas.
Yeah, I know we can't solve it tonight, but just the thought of making sure everybody gets their scheduled time. They know when they can come.
Great question.
Any other comments, questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So on the agenda that I have here, this was a possible planned break, or we can go right into the food pilot program if everybody is ready to present it, and then we'll maybe take a break after that if that works. All righty. So our next agenda item this evening, the board will receive a presentation on the progress of the Jefferson area food pilot. The Jefferson area food pilot was launched in August of 2022 in an effort to explore ways for Jeffco to provide locally sourced, healthy, and culturally aligned food for students attending schools in the Edgewater area. Composed of multiple stakeholders and community partners, the food pilot work was initially aligned to an MOU in place between the Jeffco Education Support Professionals Association, or JESPA, and the district. Before I turn this over to Ms. Pena, is there anything you'd like to say, Superintendent Dorland?
Thank you, President Parker. We all know how important food and nutrition is to making sure that our students have the nourishment they need to learn during the day. And so we're excited about the pilot opportunity in the Jefferson articulation area. It's definitely aligned to our operations, our foundation, and the work we do to operate our kitchens and provide healthy and delicious meals. It's also aligned to our learners, our future, in our strategic plan, making sure that our students can come to school ready to learn, having the nutrition that they need every day. With that, I'm going to hand it over to, I believe, Ms. Pena.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, board. Superintendent Dorland, it's great to see you all again as we kick off the 24-25 school year, and I hope each of you had a restful summer. It was great to be able to connect with so many of you a couple of weeks ago at our inaugural Back to School Bash. It was such a wonderful way to welcome our families back, and so as always, thank you for your continued support. So Jeff and I are grateful to be here this evening to summarize the successes and opportunities of the Jefferson Area School Food Pilot. I'm Tara Pena, the Chief of Family and Community Partnerships. So as you may have read from the report, I joined the pilot work group in the spring of 2023, and my role in the pilot has been to bridge connections between our families, our district, and our community partners, and ensure momentum on shared goals. And I'm proud of the work that was accomplished in support of our students and families and see many opportunities for growth moving forward.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Gatlin, the Chief Operating Officer for Jeffco. I joined the pilot working group in late 2023, late fall of 2023, or early winter of 2023. And really, my role was to support the operations of the Food and Nutrition Services Department within the context of the pilot. And so to kick off our presentation, we would like to start by showing a video that captures the spirit and the purpose of the pilot, made in collaboration with families, district, and community partners. So let's go ahead and watch that.
Well, it's just get ready with the recipes and more fresh fruit, fresh vegetables. We're making beef tacos and vegetarian tacos. 2 tacos per kid.
The Edgewater Food Pilot Program is really committed to providing locally sourced, healthy, and culturally responsive food to the students in one of the communities in which we have a large concentration of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. And what we saw is that we didn't have the number of students taking advantage of that as we would like to see. So a group of engaged stakeholders came together to say, how might we get kids excited about eating school lunch?
Charro beans, they have onion, cilantro, ham, and everything is fresh.
Those meals are served once a week with the hopes of growing.
We're very excited about this food pilot program, taking 3 of our schools and trying to do some more scratch cooking.
Yo pienso que al introducir comidas mucho más sanas en la escuela les va a ayudar a los jóvenes, a mis hijos, a los estudiantes a enfocarse más en las clases, a aprender para que los niños puedan tener una mejor educación y estar bien preparados a la hora de empezar sus clases y que se sientan bien con lo que están comiendo.
I think it really works because it's really great. It's really good and fresh food for the kids.
The most attractive thing about this is that our products are fresh from as many ingredients, local ingredients that we can.
We have a strong partnership with the Denver Food Hub in which they are helping us to create partnerships with local farmers.
The products that we've delivered to Jeffco Public Schools so far have ranged from apples, pears, vine tomatoes, celery, and a few other vegetables as well.
We have some raw and fresh vegetables that we combine with other ingredients, and we call it speed scratch.
We're trying to put like in a way like to have that the feeling of homemade, you know.
Our families actually submitted recipes that the pilot group went through and determined which ones could we actually make in a school kitchen.
Les he estado ayudando con ideas, con recetas para tratar de llegar a un acuerdo con la comunidad y con lo del piloto. Para poder introducir recetas más sanas para las escuelas. We, as a mom, we wrote some recipes and the district took them and they kind of work out the condiments and everything to be able to make that.
The pilot came about from our families. A big priority of our families is that we have locally sourced nutritious meals served to our students.
Our ultimate goal is to be able to serve scratch meals at all of our schools.
Vamos pasos pequeños, pero pienso que estamos avanzando. Vamos por el camino correcto a lo que queremos lograr. Estoy muy contenta porque ya van a haber comidas mucho más saludables que probablemente a ellos les guste. Yo quiero que siempre coman bien y que estén bien para que tengan un buen rendimiento en la escuela. The way they ate that day, I think it will help to improve their day.
The involvement of parents in a grassroots approach to work with the school district has really been incredible to see.
Mi hija está muy contenta con el resultado.
We think this is a golden opportunity to look at what could be in our future.
The pilot is a true testament to knowing our students, our families, and our community by name, strength, and need. Students feel reflected in the meals that are being served that are not only nutritious, locally sourced, but they actually taste really, really good.
Estuvo rica.
Great. Well, hopefully you appreciated a peek into some of the inner workings of the pilot there. And so for our time together this evening, we wanted to share a summary of the following: our pilot accomplishments, some challenges and lessons learned, a survey that was administered, insights from the survey and feedback, and recommendations and next steps. It's also worth noting that included in the board materials tonight was a more comprehensive report that goes in a little more detail on some of these items as well.
So for the last 2 years, representatives from the Jeffco Food Nutrition Services team, JESPA, and the Jeffco Food Policy Council worked alongside families within the Jefferson area to help them actualize their hopes for healthier, culturally aligned food for their children through a pilot program called the Jefferson Area School Food Pilot. So family and community involvement has been a key component of the Jefferson Area School Food Pilot program. The families in the Jefferson articulation area are rich in culture and identity and represent a racially, socioeconomic, and linguistically diverse community, with the majority of students and families being Latino. So the purpose of the Jefferson Area School Food Pilot was to explore ways for Jeffco Public Schools to provide locally sourced, healthy, and culturally aligned food for students attending schools in the Edgewater area. These schools included Edgewater Elementary, Jefferson Junior Senior, and Lumberg Elementary. The pilot was launched in August of 2022 as a result of a 2-year MOU. And this past June, so June of this year, a newly revised MOU was established with the pilot coming to a full close in May of 2025.
The pilot objectives were outlined in the MOU between Jeffco and JESPA, and the objectives identified were to enhance programs that provide quality, nutritious meals to Jeffco students, to provide meals in an efficient manner, and for all relevant stakeholders to understand and support the path to these outcomes. The stakeholders working to actualize the objectives of the pilot were an identified working group that included representatives from the groups you see listed. And from August 2022 through June 2024, the Jefferson Area School Food Pilot Programs Working Group met 15 times, typically monthly, during the school year. The primary focus of the group's effort was to add nutritious and culturally aligned recipes, including agreeing on specific ingredients and food products to the district's meal plan for the 3 participating schools. And as you can imagine, bringing together various stakeholders to co-design on this important issue presented opportunities and challenges that the working group navigated throughout the duration of the pilot. And while the pilot has at times generated more questions than answers, the accomplishments of the pilot working group over the last 2 years are significant and deserve to be celebrated. And these accomplishments include school menus created or done collaboratively with families. Numerous taste testings provided a shared experience and brought students, families, and school and district staff together. And most notably, a rotation of 15 nutritious and or culturally aligned recipes have been collaboratively agreed upon and incorporated into the Jefferson Area Schools meal schedules for the 24-25 school year. And as you saw from the video, many of the recipes being served are recipes from our families that were submitted and contributed to. Each recipe will be served once a week in a 3-week rotation, ensuring these meals are provided 5 days per week. The pilot set out to achieve very outcome-driven and aspirational goals to improve the quality of food being served to students in the Jefferson area. Given the size of the district, the number of variables that needed consideration for the pilot to be successful, and the different priorities brought to the table by each stakeholder group, challenges were inevitable. The challenges are listed here for you, and we want to elevate a few, including differing approaches and understanding of the work, lack of shared definitions and trust, underrepresentation of individual parent voice, operational limitations, including federal guidelines. And efforts to resolve these challenges included bringing in an external facilitator to help with the process, putting structures in place to balance participation among stakeholders with an emphasis on family voice, inviting families to share ownership of the agenda setting and to lead topic discussions, and inviting family and community partners to submit, review, and taste test recipes.
So as the pilot neared the initial 2-year completion this past spring, a district survey was given to all stakeholders engaged in the pilot. So the purpose of the survey was to gather feedback on the Jefferson Area School Food Pilot Program, identify the program's successes and challenges, and understand its achievements, address any issues, and extract valuable insights. So of the 36 stakeholders that received 36 individuals that received the survey, we received 14 responses. At our June pilot meeting, it's important to uplift, we did have an opportunity, Jeff and I, to share the survey results with the pilot working group. So as a result, we received some important feedback from our families about not feeling entirely comfortable to take the survey for a variety of reasons. So Jeff and I leaned in to listen and learn, and we'll take this feedback to inform any future surveys within the pilot group. Something important to uplift is feedback shared by both Food Nutrition Services staff and our families. Both agree that since the launch of the pilot program, school menus at participating schools include more culturally aligned recipes. So that was really something important to uplift. Additional survey findings include that respondents agree that the group has completed the MOU as outlined, but did not think the pilot went above and beyond the expectations set in the MOU. 13 of 14 respondents agree that the working group listened to everyone's ideas, and that by listening to the pilot group, recipes have been implemented and adjusted according to feedback along the way. Additional highlights of the survey findings include adding new recipes that use fresh fruits and vegetables, introducing local fresh produce to existing meals when possible, and modifying student favorite meals to use simpler ingredients. The survey also highlighted several pilot capabilities and limitations. Some respondents on the survey indicated that from their perspective, the FNS team has sufficient capability to provide scratch-cooked school meals using local, fresh ingredients for all students. Others, the respondents indicated that limitations varied by site, but overall the program or the pilot limitations were limited by lack of equipment, lack of adequate staffing, a lack of a central kitchen, preparing culturally aligned recipes in large quantities while ensuring consistency in taste and quality, and difficulty accessing consistent, fresh local ingredients. So as we have heard of the successes and challenges of the pilot over the last 2 years, there have been lots of lessons learned. So these have included 12 of the 14 respondents want the school food pilot program to keep going and expand to more schools. That respondents suggested that community members, schools, and the district should endeavor to seek out student perspective, share information early and often with families, create an environment where the goals are clear and conflict is minimal, and establish a consistent working group membership. The pilot also presented the opportunity for us to identify opportunities and potential solutions to further strengthen the impact of the pilot as we head into this school year and the final year of the pilot. So some of these identified opportunities for improvement include professional facilitation, relationship building, and shared definition among stakeholders, clearly defined roles for district, families, staff, and community partners, to identify, clarify, and document objectives moving forward, to strengthen the collaboration between food nutrition services and our families, to increase student voice and participation in the pilot, and then finally to identify operations, challenges, and limitations, and connect them to the district's future strategic master plan. There was also operational limitations that were uplifted that we'd like to mention that include the size of school kitchens and the limited dry goods storage, seasonal food products and ingredients that are in some cases and in others are not available for purchase throughout the year, and the ability to procure local seasonal food at scale and at a competitive price. So as for next steps of the pilot, we are excited to see, as you learned, about the impact the 15 new meals and recipes will have on the student experience in the Jefferson area. So as we look ahead this school year, some of the next steps for the pilot include monitoring the success of the new menu rollout with regular engagement with our students, to make adjustments to recipes and offerings as needed, to expand upon the definition and feasibility of scratch cooking, and to continue to identify potential community partners as we work to identify locally sourced ingredients when possible. We also look forward to onboarding a new facilitator who will provide project management and communication support for the pilot working group. Important to note that the pilot will reach its culmination in May of 2025, incorporating for this next school year the lessons learned and recommendations gathered from stakeholders. And we will continue to track our project progress towards our current MOU agreements. So with all of that, do you have any questions? Questions? Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is one of the projects that we did hear a lot about as we were preparing to join the board. And I honestly heard a lot of very different feedback depending on who you spoke to and how involved they were in the project. So I want to thank you for listing the challenges there. That reflects some of what I heard as well. And I'm curious if you feel like there was any particular response that helped to either repair or rebuild or increase trust between the community partners and the people who are more district or school side.
Absolutely. That's an excellent question. I would say that some really intentional community building was done over the last semester, as well as putting systems and structures in place to ensure balanced perspectives and participation to really include an opportunity for families to share and uplift their voices and their concerns and ideas. So there was opportunities for families to own parts of the agenda and or topics that they would then lead. And so I think that was really great. I think the challenge that presented itself sometimes with that is there were families that would share after the meetings that well, we had a family or two or four speaking on behalf of the families that that family's concerns might not accurately reflect my concern. And so let me share my concern with you. So working to also create that psychological safety necessary for all families to be heard. So putting protocols in place that would allow in really good wait time and making certain that every family had a chance to share their concern or their ideas. And so a lot of feedback that I heard as we entered into spring and summer is that families felt that these structures really did allow them to feel more heard. And we actually made a lot of progress this spring. We were getting through agendas and actually getting work completed in a way that really honored what we set out to do in the pilot. And so that was, I would say, a success that, the only way through is through, and we got through.
I would also add, too, that we went through probably little over half of last school year without a facilitator. And we did bring facilitation in, I want to say January, February-ish of this calendar year. And I think that really helped support a lot of the things that Ms. Pena mentioned in regards to adding structures, adding systems that just were lacking prior to that. And I imagine that was probably at a time when some frustrations were boiling up prior to that engagement.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you were able to adjust course and add in a facilitator or third party, hopefully to encourage more people to participate in those conversations. I am curious also about two other things. One is having only 14 responses out of 36 stakeholders. I'm curious about that. You mentioned that you leaned in a little to learn about that, but if there's any takeaways that we can take for now for other surveys that we offer, I'm curious about that and increasing participation. And then my other question is going to be about plans for expanding or what happens after the MOU closes out in 2025, like more long term, what can we do with what we learned here?
Excellent question about the number of survey respondents we had. We actually uplifted that same question, and families were really brave to be able to share feedback that one, well, the survey was translated and we felt was really culturally sensitive and accessible in Spanish, which is our family's preferred language in the pilot group, that the technical language felt scary, and it really felt like there was, just a language barrier. Even though it was translated, there's some technical language in there that didn't necessarily translate well, that not entirely certain. And so while we have a large demographic of Latino families, not every family shares the same race or ethnicity or lived experience and background. And so we have a lot, it's beautiful, the array of Latinidad that was represented with our families. And many of them, have lots of strengths and have named barriers that have made it challenging to access and show up really authentically just as they navigate, an educational, institution. And so it's scary. And so how might we have leaned in and done more focus groups or invited more conversational feedback throughout that maybe the pilot working group, because it was so action oriented, didn't always allow for just some of that open engagement. And so there was a little bit of maybe fear and discomfort with completing the survey due to technical language, lived experience, and, I would imagine a variety of other things. And then what is the opportunity to move forward at scale? I think that this next year does really present the opportunity for us to navigate that. You heard a lot from Beth in the video around expanding scratch cooking or doing some speed scratch, which would bring more fresh ingredients or simpler ingredients that would be scratched, cooked, maybe at a central kitchen or a central location, and then provided to the schools. And so that very much is an ambitious goal. And so that is something that we've already begun to think about. How are we going to track that? We have a list of all the ingredients and recipes. One, we're tracking that with families around which of these are locally procured. Like, where are these recipes coming from? Are they coming from local farms? What are things that we can get in season right now? And do we need to change the order of recipes to allow for more seasonal items to come in, and then we phase those out and we bring other things in? And so one, it's just what's available for us locally. Two, at scale, we're a large organization, and so I always want to make certain that we're being fiscally responsible. And so can we get things at a really competitive price? And so while for the pilot, we might be able to access some locally procured goods for like the East Denver Food Hub for 3 schools, to do that at scale in a much larger articulation area, we always know that with quality, comes at a higher cost as well. So we're also going to be tracking the cost of recipes throughout this school year to determine if there are recipes that lend themselves nicely to this model that could be easily replicated, and where some of those challenges might be. And so we're really going to dig into right now these 15 recipes, see if there's places to expand, and where might scratch cooking be possible, knowing that locally sourced has been a really big priority for our families who really value farm to table.
I'll also add a couple things to that. We're excited about offering the 15 menu items consecutively, and it also allows us to really learn and really compare it and do an apples to apples comparison to some of our other kitchens around what are our efficiencies, what do our operations look like, what do our costs look like. And to commend our F&S team, they've been really creative in supporting some of the objectives of this pilot. In a good example of that is knowing that there are limitations to some of the kitchens that in our pilot schools, they actually prepare some of those. We have a really small, I hate to even say the word central kitchen, it's a really small production kitchen over our quail facility. They are actually producing some of the items there and then taking them out to the schools. And so when we're looking at, that doesn't scale well. And so really exploring the recipes, exploring the menu items just to see, is that a big barrier? Are there ways to overcome that? But really by offering a meal every day this school year, I think we're going to get a good idea of how we could do that and really what are just some major challenges that we're struggling with.
Yeah, I have one last question about this, and just I don't know if it's a question or something to think about or something I'm curious about, is just when we talk about sustainability with this kind of pilot program, and with all of the considerations about the cost of locally grown food and the scale, and then prepping different things on different sites. I'm curious, as we walk through this year, what we can learn about sustainability for this sort of endeavor, and how do we support it? How can we help make some scratch meals more like a sustainable thing that we could potentially do? But also, what are some of the pitfalls where this might become a problem if we do try to expand without having enough partners to kind of support the cost and the resources for doing that?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep going with the apple analogy. You said apples to apple, comparing apples to apples. It was a cute play on words here. And I'm going to say taking small bites of the apple, just keep going with it, is, yes, intended to really take intentional small bites of the apple to make certain that, where might we have success at scale. And so doing it small and in a way that can allow for success, so that we don't say, we are going to expand, and then it's maybe not successful because there's cost limitations, or even procuring the goods and the ingredients with really good intention, supply and demand kind of factor in. And so just being really thoughtful. And I think this is going to be a really great learning year, that now we have our recipes identified, our family's voice have been uplifted. We'll continue to make that a part of the process, and really digging into the data to help us make some informed decisions for moving forward.
Great. Thank you so much.
I'm just curious. I know that there's a government program that helps lower the cost when families use SNAP at farmers markets to try to make that local produce more affordable for families. Is there anything similar to that would help us lower our costs?
That's an excellent question. We have a really great partner in the Jeffco Food Policy Council, and they really do help us navigate the broader community and programming and really understand the local and state context. And so that is not something I've heard, but absolutely something that I will uplift. I know many of our families and our community partners are listening this evening, so they'll hear that question too. And I think that's something for us to really lean into and learn from, to see about where might we take advantage of some elsewhere funding to maximize our impact.
I could remember, I'm pretty sure I read about it in the Colorado Sun, that families don't know about this program and are not using it at the level that the government was hoping. So also getting that information out to them would probably be great too.
Absolutely, and that is something that our families have asked for. In addition to the pilot, they just, nutrition and serving healthy meals, not only at school to ensure that accessibility, but how might I be doing that at home with, whatever I have, at my means as a family. And so they're interested in cooking classes and learning more about nutrition and reading labels and some of that. And so we really, with the hope of our new community engagement facilitator that's coming on board to really help uplift and make some of those connections with external partners to bring that to our families as well.
I was curious, have you all done any financial modeling on this? How much did this cost? What's the difference between supporting a program like this and what they would have received otherwise, and is it more or less? And we just didn't see any numbers around how, and I'm curious, how are we paying for the pilot?
Yep. So we are paying for the pilot out of the Food Nutrition Service Fund right now, and that's something that we've been tracking. It was last year. It was one meal a week after a certain part of the school year. So we are really looking at, as we're implementing it in a more robust way, to look at our costs on a per meal, per labor hour metric that really kind of equalizes and apples to apples across other schools of like size, and that's something that we're going to be taking a close look at. And I think that'll be part of the conversation we'll be having around what are our next steps, and are we able to continue it just based on that alone. But we are taking a peek at that now that we're implementing more consistently. I think we're going to have better data and better understanding of what that looks like.
Also thinking about, Healthy Meals for All being in its implementation year 2, and really thinking about how do we most effectively and accurately track the baseline information. Really going to use this really next year, knowing that we have 15 meals that we're rolling out, using this as a baseline year to help us track that data to help inform moving forward, so we can bring that financial landscape at a later time.
Do you have any sense did it cost more than normal, or
it's hard. We didn't have the data broken down to what was our costs at that level on the days that we served a pilot meal. So like Ms. Pena said, I think we're going to be putting that together, but we just haven't done that yet at that level, just based on a little bit of the inconsistency of offerings last year.
From an outsider, if you didn't notice it was costing more, maybe that's a good thing.
Sure.
Wasn't breaking your budget, then anyways, but that was helpful. We talked when we first, the three of us came on the board a lot about a central kitchen, and I am just continuously interested in that. I know the board before us was really interested. I think they did visits to central kitchens, and I wondered where. I know you've just kind of briefly mentioned it. I don't know if this is more of a Superintendent Dorland question, but what are we thinking about as a district around that initiative?
I'll jump in and then you can add on, Mr. Gatlin, as you see fit. But, prior to all of our time here in these seats, there was a vision that was created for a central kitchen in Jeffco. I think partly driven by the issue that our kitchens were built at all different points in time, and they have all different types of, we have many of them. We have all different types of equipment, all different types of size, storage, all of the things. And so it does lead to some inconsistencies in the type of scratch cooking we can do for some students versus others, depending upon the kitchen. I think it's something that actually our neighbors I know in Adams 12 are working towards as well with some of the ballot initiative that they're looking at for November. And I think this is a question that we can further explore as Mr. Gatlin leads us forward with our strategic facility plan, the next strategic facility planning. But it's going to be expensive, right? So that's the issue. And so I do think it's something that we need to think about in terms of our longer term planning.
Yeah,
I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to mention, that that will be part of the analysis that we do in the study we do with the master plan around, investments on a per kitchen level and the benefit that we get versus if we did build a central facility. So I think more coming. And I'd say that the concept is still out there to be explored, and it'll be woven into that project for sure.
I think an important part of this has been the focus on being culturally sensitive. And I wonder, and I think that we're doing this work to see how it fits for these three schools, but then how it fits for the whole district and how we could think about this more broadly or not. Does it work or not? And I just wonder, so we're talking about recipes for these particular schools, but culturally sensitive will be different for different schools and articulation areas, and our district's so big. How do you scale the concept of culturally sensitive in a project like this when it's like the meals that you're making now may not be appealing to parents and families in lots of other schools. So where do we scale what we're doing in three schools, and do we have to adapt culturally sensitive approaches everywhere? And what's the boundary of that, and how? I just think it's something we should think about now, because quickly we'll disappoint people.
Absolutely. I mean, I think what you heard from the video is this pilot was really, and much like our partner at the East Denver Food Hub Uplifted, this really has been a grassroots movement from our families, and we answered that call to action. And while agreeing upon shared outcomes and, at time the scale of need expanded the scope of the amount of time of what we could accomplish in an hour and a half once a month, one, really proud of what we were able to do. And again, it was a call to action for that community. And absolutely right, it might not be appropriate to apply or assume that what this community needs and wants for their children and families is appropriate or needed in another community. And that's a lot of the needle we tried to thread, is that because this is a pilot, as other communities or families have asked, what does this mean for our community? Or families seem to be really, happy with kind of how things are. Does this mean we're going to have to change what we're doing? And the power in the pilot is that it's at scale for that community and addressing that family's needs and urgencies. And so as we continue to strengthen relationships and be present with families, know our communities and families by name, strength, and need, we will listen for other opportunities and make certain that we can be present and address any needs or opportunities that might arise as we do, in partnership with families in other ways.
I just have a few things to say. I took part in a taste testing this summer at Edgewater Elementary School. So that was quite fun. And they did have a summer program going on. So they actually had kids in the cafeteria. And then there were volunteer parents who were putting together some tacos and some other recipes they were trying out. And they had a survey at the end. What did you think? So I appreciated being part of it. I had a chance to talk to some of the volunteer parents who were working there. And so granted, this was not during a school year. It was, a different setting. But I did learn that that school, Edgewater Elementary, at least from the perspective of the parents I was talking to, had a lot of equipment that they weren't using. And so to your point about these schools were built at different times and have different equipment, it just brought up the idea that we've got that challenge. And they seem to be frustrated. They said they had one piece of equipment that they took the hood away. There were some, health problems associated with it, but they felt they didn't get information on why they can't use their equipment anymore. So that's just an aside. And I also learned from them that the program seemed to be more successful at the elementary school, but when it was in the high school, Jefferson High School, there was not nearly the participation that they'd hoped for, and they thought it was communication, that people didn't even know this day is, the special food day, recipe day. So you did address it in the slide presentation, that communication, letting parents know that it's available, will increase the participation. But I was also struck by the tension or the difficulty of having the community be involved and in many ways leading the effort and wanting to, versus the school district has planned, and they already plan their meals for I don't know how many weeks or months or years in advance they do, and they've got a kind of real tight running ship. And then you've got the parents are still figuring out the recipes and communicating, and they want to do this, that they don't get the benefit of what the district is able to do if they've got the planning thing. So I could see that it was a wonderful effort. The people who were involved, the volunteers, were so excited, and the kids seemed to be liking the meals, but it was not an easy thing, that it had its challenges. And I do think that the idea of the central kitchen came up, and I am excited about continuing to talk about it. I wanted to find out what you said Adams 12 is looking into it, and I think DPS has some parts of it that have some central facilities. So Boulder too. So I think that would be great for the facilities planning and the master plan to see what we can do in that area. So anyway, it's wonderful to see that we did meet a community where they were, and I've been, doing what we can to be not only bringing fresh food and local food produce, but as you were pointing out, that community is very special, and being culturally sensitive to them is a great thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you for that feedback. One interesting thing that we learned by speaking with students, and would agree that getting the high school students excited, and y'all spend a lot of time in our high school, so you can understand some of that challenge. One, absolutely think that we need to be over communicating about, the pilot and what meals are going to be served when, and build some excitement, so students, could be really eager to try out the meals. And something that we learned from the little kids is that many of the recipes were intended to be served, the ingredients are needed to be mixed together, but for allergies and other things, they're being served kind of a la carte. And so when you eat, you have the lettuce and your cheese and your chicken and your rice all separate, kids don't necessarily know you need to put it all together. And so once the kids learned you got to mix it all, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so delicious. But so even little things that you make some assumptions that kids know this all goes together, but we got little tiny kids that don't know you're making a chicken bowl, so I think I'm going to keep going with it, some low hanging fruit, that we can definitely make sure that our kids, understand and can fully embrace the intent and the spirit of the pilot. And I think this is going to be a really promising year. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, now we will take a 10-minute break and come back in 10 minutes. Okay, we are going to restart our meeting right now. Our next agenda item for this evening, the board will receive a presentation and information update on the progress of the construction of the Arvada Aquatic Center and have an opportunity to dialogue about project costs and an additional investment request. While we're receiving this presentation tonight, the board is not currently scheduled to take associated action. Based on our discussion this afternoon, I'll be following up with each board member on next steps. So tonight, district staff are joined by Brian Archer, Director of Finance with the City of Arvada. Before I turn this over to Mr. Gatlin, is there anything you'd like to add, Superintendent Dorland?
Thank you, President Parker. I want to acknowledge that the vision for this project was created and the action for this project was started long before anyone were in our seats tonight. 2 previous boards ago was the start of the conversation around this partnership with the City of Arvada. And so now here we are, and the project was started again by that same board and is 2 years now into it. And I'm excited that Mr. Archer is here to present to us the status of a project that we may not have started ourselves as this board, but we'll have some decisions to make at some point. And want to reiterate, President Parker, what you mentioned is that the purpose of tonight's agenda is not for decision making this evening, but possibly at a future meeting after you all have a chance to study and discuss this topic. So thank you, Mr. Archer. And Mr. Gatlin, I'm going to hand it to you. And thanks for other team members for being here as well.
Thank you, Superintendent Dorland. Thank you, Board. Nice to be back in front of you again after a quick break. Maybe real quick, I would like to introduce the folks at the table with me. Brenna Copeland, our CFO, Greg Avedikian, who is our Operations Project Manager, and I do want to thank Mr. Archer again for taking time to present this information to the Board tonight. And a little background about the project to go a little bit deeper than what Superintendent Dorland mentioned. Since its opening in 1979, the Myers Pool has served as a joint facility between the City of Arvada and Apex Park and Rec District and plays a significant role as a venue for the Jeffco Public Schools swim meets and training sessions. However, due to structural issues identified in 2012, there was a recognized need for a new aquatics facility. This led to a partnership in 2020 to construct a new facility with an estimated total cost of $35 million. The facility was to be funded and operated as an intergovernmental project involving Jeffco Public Schools, the City of Arvada, and Apex, with the school board approval ultimately being received right at the end of December of 2021. It's important to note that Jeffco will have first priority use of the facility over all other users for its Colorado High School Activities Association, or CHASA, sanctioned sports teams. And this priority use continues until the facility is no longer in use as an aquatic center. I know many of you recently visited and toured the facility. It's quite an impressive facility, and I know I enjoyed visiting it recently as well. Since the initially established budget of $35 million, the project costs have increased, and I want to once again thank Mr. Archer for being here tonight to present to you, and I'd like to turn this over to him to provide more detailed information about the project and the costs. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Gatlin. Thank you, Ms. Dorland. And Board, thank you for the opportunity to come speak to you tonight. Jeff did a wonderful job talking about the history, and so I just wanted to show a picture of what Myers Pool looked like. As you know, it's now gone. And the preliminary design of now the Arvada Aquatic Center. It ultimately won't look exactly like that, but it's pretty close. So we heard a little bit about the previous timeline, so I'd like to pick it up in 2019 and talk about what we were doing after the identification in 2012 that the facility was not safe anymore. And so Apex did an operations study, and it was obvious we needed this pool. And so we wanted to move forward with what it could look like in the future, and that is when the school district and Apex and the city started their conversations. And we were lucky enough to agree and come up with an IGA in November of 2021. And Apex will continue to run the pool. We would share in the cost. And ultimately, Arvada would own the pool, but Jeffco would get the first rights, what had just been discussed. Jeffco was nice enough to lead on the bond issue side, work with some contacts that they previously had, and issued a COP for $35 million in December of 2021. We started the project, as you can see, with design, owner's rep, and a CMGC contract, which took all of 2022. We then looked for construction to begin. There was some work that needed to be done on the water site, and so that happened in the spring of 2023, kind of after, right at the end of school. That went very quickly, and that is that parking lot that many of you probably parked in. That enabled us to start construction, be able to stage there and start the pool immediately. The pool has gone very well, fortunately. The weather has been good, I guess, over the past year and a half. We've had a few snow days, but ultimately they were able to survive those. At last count, we're down to one weather day. So between now and opening, hopefully we don't need that one weather day. Substantial completion date originally was in September. It's now been pushed to the beginning of October. As I heard many of you got to see it last Friday, we're getting close, getting very, very close. And then final completion in December. So a quick little bit more detailed look at what the original estimate was back in January of 2021. These are the numbers we used to issue the bond or in a certificate of participation. So ultimately a $35 million estimate, with the largest cost being around construction. This last budget, which was adjusted in June of last year, and we've pretty much stayed with this budget since then, you can see, again, the largest change is around construction, about a $14 million increase. And I asked our construction team to go ahead and pull, where did that come from? Because we didn't substantially change the project in any way. And so what had happened is inflation. So in 2021, when it was $35 million, we saw a 19% increase in inflationary costs. 2022, a 5% increase. And this last year, a 7% increase. And so when you take those over the life of the project, that is how we get to $46 million. There were two small changes on the project. One of those being the addition of, I'm going to go back. One of those being the addition of some larger diving boards, and the addition of a 10-meter diving board that was paid for by one of our outside partners through a grant. And then we did work on changing some of the internal locker rooms. It actually was an improvement to those locker rooms. And so those costs were almost insignificant. So you can see overall what the individual line item changes look like. This is a little bit more detailed explanation of that. You will notice that there's $1.6 million listed for the water site. That is for the parking lot. When this was originally designed, there was not an expectation for the need of that parking lot. And when they came up with the final design, it was obvious that we needed that. And so that needed to be added. Inflation, about $9.8 million. The City of Arvada is required to do a LEED certification on all of our new buildings. That was passed by our city council after this project actually had started, and the team wanted to recognize that. And the estimate to that was somewhere in the vicinity of $2 million. And then obviously we used our contingencies to offset some of those increases. Apex was able to step forward and pull a couple items off the list. So they were able to pay for some internal FF&E and save some items from Myers Pool. And then they were able to also pay for some technology upgrades through their operations budget. So they felt very committed to this project, and this is what they were able to commit. So this is kind of a final recap of where we sit today, the $35 million COP. We were able to earn some interest revenue. Working with Brenna and her team, we were able to invest the funds. As you know, that the investment market has been much better over the last couple of years, and so we got a nice little return on that. Currently sits at about $1.5 million. That number may grow a little bit in the next few months, but since we're spending the money pretty rapidly, I don't think there will be a large change there. Made mention of the Mile High Diving Grant, which is about $443,000. And then Apex did want to do in addition to it the timing, and they went ahead and paid for that as well. So we're sitting today at a $9 million need. So we're hoping to come to you all and ask if you would consider an additional contribution to the project. I will tell you the City of Arvada is very committed to this project. We do have the ability to pay for it, yet it will hurt our other projects. More specifically, 72nd Avenue is the one that we have going right now. And so if we need to come up with this entire $9 million, we will need to delay 72nd Avenue. And we'll look at delaying some other parks projects to fund the difference. However, if the district could so see that they can make a contribution that would help us keep on schedule with 72nd and on schedule with our other parks projects. And again, I really want to thank you for your partnership. This pool would have never happened without you. We were talking about this with my team, and we certainly could not have built anything that it looks like today. In fact, we couldn't have even replaced Myers in the place it was today. We would have not had a 50-meter pool. We would have not had a competition pool. Arvada would have had to build something similar to what was built at some of our other recreational facilities. So again, thank you very much for the partnership. And that completes my presentation. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add. Any questions I can answer?
Board, any questions? Yeah, Director Reed.
Mine probably goes mostly to Mr. Gatlin. One of the things I'm wondering is if Arvada has to delay construction on 72nd Avenue, because if we chose not to assist with this, how would that impact our schools and our transportation and kids getting safely to and from school?
That's a great question, and one that I'm not going to give you a good answer to tonight, but I'm happy to have further conversation with the city to understand really the scope and the impact of the project. And I'd be happy to follow up and provide the board an update on potential transportation impacts that we might see with that.
Can I add? I am a parent who drives that. And it's manageable, but it definitely, the delay would be hard. But I have noted recently it's not as bad as last year on that stretch, but because we've been working on 72nd for quite a long time. So I don't have any real information.
I would just offer that the project itself is moving forward. However, they have completed both sides before the dig. And so that's why it's a little bit better than it's been, but you will notice that there's still the pinch points right outside of your school that's just north of there. So, correct.
On the water site upgrade and the parking lot, were there any other upgrades to that site that were contemplated but might not be in this?
I do know that there's still additional funding, about $250,000 for upgrades to water that will need to be completed after this project has been completed. That's still reserved in the overall project budget. I can't speak to what those are because I don't know what they are.
Thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. Did I understand correctly that you're still planning to go ahead with the completion of this pool, whether you get extra funding from us or not? That will happen, so that we don't have a risk of any of our schools not having a pool to swim in or practice in or anything. That's correct?
President Parker, that is correct.
And how many of our schools use that pool? Do we know?
I have Patrick Simpson here, who has been doing some research to make sure we could answer some questions we thought you might have, and this was one of the questions we anticipated. So Mr. Simpson is going to answer how many schools, and you can even just call the school names out. That would be great.
Yeah, so we have 13 schools that will use the pool, all at varying levels. So we have our north schools, Stanley Lake, Ralston Valley, Pomona, and Arvada West currently use Myers as their primary pool. Wheat Ridge will also move into that space as a primary pool for some, lots of reasons. Additional schools that offer swimming are Bear Creek, Chatfield, Columbine, Conifer, Dakota Ridge, Evergreen, Golden, Green Mountain, and Lakewood.
So those last schools would be for like competitions.
Correct. Yep,
but not
swim.
Regular daily use.
Correct.
And those schools you just listed, especially down south, Conifer, et cetera, what facilities are they using now?
Yeah, so so the schools down south, Columbine, Chatfield, Dakota, primarily use the Ridge Rec Center or Lily Gulch, so part of Foothills Park and Rec. Lakewood High School and Golden High School use Golden Rec. Golden Rec is not a competition site due to some size issues, but it's a practice facility for us. Our mountain schools use Wolf Rec Center, which is right there next to Evergreen High School. Green Mountain High School uses Green Mountain Rec Center, and then Wheat Ridge currently uses Wheat Ridge Park and Rec, their pool right there off of Kipling.
Can I add to that? If you didn't list a high school in that, does that mean they don't have a swim program?
That's correct. Now, those kids typically, an example that's top of my list here is Arvada.
That was my number one
Arvada
question.
High School has historically, years ago, had a swim team. Due to participation numbers, that's dropped a little bit. And so those kids are allowed to participate at any of our Jeffco schools. So most of them go to Pomona for their swim team or Stanley Lake most of the time, but they would have access to any Jeffco team.
With the proximity of Arvada to the pool, should they decide to have a program in the future, would the facility be available to them?
Absolutely. So the facility is, per the IGA, is available to all of our schools. Some of it's going to be us once it's done, and actually being able to maximize usage of the facility. All of our schools will use it. It'll just be a matter of practice time specifically about, does it make sense for the reasons to have a Columbine come up from the south to practice daily? They'll come up a lot to participate or compete. So those are some of the things we still need to iron out in our department.
Thanks.
I just wanted to echo that we didn't decide we didn't engage, we weren't the decision makers on that IGA, but I also think we wouldn't have a pool like this for our swimmers for sure. And when we did the tour, the woman, I'm so sorry, I've forgotten her name, who was a coach for so long and will be the facilities manager. But she was talking about just the quality of the pool. And I think it's great for our students who are swimmers. It's like giving any of our athletes, when you're listing the places where they swim, and I only know a few of those, and I'm they're great pools, but they're not competition pools, and they're not places where our athletes can really thrive in their sport. I was a swimmer and I coached Texas Aquatics at UT Austin, and we had a facility like that there, and it's just complete next level for our athletes. So I think that's really great. I have had a few questions come up that I gave to Ms. Relu, and I don't need them answered now but just around our IGA and more of the details of that, some of our IGAs are coming to surface with some of our school dispositions and parks and things like that, and what happens when 20 years go forward and things start to unravel, or I'm using all the wrong words, not unravel, but change. So I think as we think about more investment in this, I think for me personally, understanding a little bit more details around the IGA and what our role is, not just for our swimmers, but in kind of ownership of the pool or consequences if you decided to sell the pool, as we're deciding to sell schools right now and things like that, but Lisa knows this, and so I don't need answers right now. I don't think we have them yet. So, yeah.
And once we have those answers, there were good questions that you posed, Director Barta, and for other board members, we'll make sure you have line of sight into Director Varda's questions as well as the answers that we're able to provide for those questions. So thank you.
And honestly, the questions I have is really to help us think how would making another investment actually be good for us? Not so much bad for us. I'm thinking how do we actually justify more investment, because we understand our position in the pool as we go forward.
And I do want to offer, this is part of the IGA. Arvada did put $1.5 million aside for maintenance and future replacement of items, that there's a separate IGA with Jeffco, Apex, and the city around maintaining the pool. Now, granted, $1.5 million seems like a lot of money today. Obviously, 20 years from now, that money will be gone. But I do think it helps us in the short term if something were to go wrong. So, and I know there's plenty more that's a part of that, but I just wanted to provide that one for you.
May I then add to the request, Ms. Relu, that we look at both IGAs if there's two of them? That'd be helpful. Thank you.
I would also like to say that I was a swimmer, and all my family was. And in fact, I got to see swimming at the Olympics. And so it was quite exciting. Yes, I was there. Did you see me? Anyway, so I love swimming. I am from the South now, and so, or not now, but that I'm representing the Southern schools. And so I'm very aware of their situation. In fact, my daughter's assistant coach, swim coach at Conifer High School. And so, of course, her team now is all ready to get a pool like Arvada Aquatic Center and Conifer. I want to know, how do we do it? But anyway, I'm very interested because my understanding now is that basically we went in on this IGA with Arvada, and so we are kind of like co-owners of the mortgage, but we're not on the title. And so I just want to make sure that I understand, and I've gotten a lot of the information, but just what our financial future is in that respect. And that's why I know it's not easy, especially when you're talking, Mr. Simpson, about the pools that might have swimmers, or they have enough to have a whole team, or some of the swimmers join another team. Just getting a feel for what our costs are for swimming per year, how much they vary year to year, and how much help this is for us to have a planned northern no cost kind of situation.
Go ahead, Patrick. I might not use the phrase no cost.
Okay.
But I do think he's done some of that analysis too, and will continue to do so. Do you want to?
Yeah, that's all I was going to say is we are actively working on that right now. There is a lot of variables. It's not a easy report to where we pull for budgeting for lots of reasons. And so we are actively working on that, and we'll have a lot more information for you.
Okay, great.
The one thing, President Parker, I think that is important in what you said is that in other pools, we are still paying usage fees, right? And what will be once Myers Pool is done is that we won't be paying usage fees on an annual basis because we've sort of paid up front with the co-loan that we own with the city of Arvada. So, but Patrick's been looking at what those usage fees are in other places so we can get you that information. So thanks for that question.
Thank you.
But some of those would continue, correct? Because we would still have to pay usage fees, I assume, with facilities like the Golden Rec Center and Lily Gulch and all those. Okay.
Okay, any other questions at this point? So we do look forward to getting a little more information on it and figuring out the next steps. As I mentioned, I'll talk to all the board members, figure out how you're feeling about the situation, and we'll move on from here. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And the tour of the facility was amazing.
It's really a wonderful facility, and it's really going to be great for our community. So thank you again.
Thank you. So for the last item on our agenda this evening, the board will receive a presentation from our superintendent on the strategic direction of the district for the 2024-2025 school year. As a reminder to the board and our listening public, since the launch of Jeffco Thrives 2025, the district's strategic plan in the fall of 2022, the work of the district has been grounded in providing a world-class education that prepares all Jeffco students for bright and successful futures as local and global citizens. So I will now hand it over to Superintendent Dorland.
Thank you, President Parker. I'm hoping that much of what I discussed with the board tonight is familiar because this year we are hoping to inspire and be inspired by impact in the work that we've already started and not do a bunch of new things, but do the things that we have started in a better and more productive way to realize the outcomes that we've set in terms of our priorities for the plan. I have asked Dr. Kim to join me, so thank you, Dr. Kim. She'll be available to add on whatever she feels like she might need to add to my presentation. And then, of course, if there are questions or dialogue that the board wants to have, we are both here for you. So let me start with our the first slide. I don't have a clicker, so maybe it would be best if I grab that, This first slide I showed at our leadership launch, and it's one of my favorite slides that the communications team has built in a long time because I'm smiling in every photo, and it's the things that I love about this job. All of the wonderful experiences that I get to have in our schools with our kids. There's a picture of me with preschool students outside of Campbell Early Learning Center. We were waiting for the governor to arrive for his tour of Campbell Early Learning Center, and then he and I were able to speak to 3- and 4-year-olds in a classroom that day. We talked all about his bright blue tennis shoes, and one of the young students in the classroom had the exact same shoes, which was very exciting for everybody involved, including the governor. So that was great. I've had the opportunity to sit and work with students as they do their math problems. I've read to classrooms of students, which I love doing. I have celebrated important milestones and awards for entire school communities. You can see me wearing a mask in one of these photos up here. So I started in April of 2021, and it feels like a long time and a short time since then. There's a picture of me and Wyatt. I was able to attend his first day of 9th grade. If you expanded that picture out, you would see some of the other boys that are on his team standing with us. And I mean, what a special experience as a mom and superintendent to be able to go to the first day of your son's 9th grade year. I just feel incredibly lucky to do the work that I do every day for Jeffco, and can testify that we are an incredibly special community with special students, special families, and really incredible staff that take care of our kids every day. So here are our goals from our strategic plan that we built aligned to the vision, mission, and values that you all set as a Board of Education. The priority 1 and priority 2, so that's what P1 means. Goal 1 is a culture of instructional excellence, and goal 2 is extraordinary student experience. And this is all about our learners, our future. And we are continuing to work on that this year. And priority 2, which is our people, our strength. We are a collaborative, inclusive team culture, and we are working at that every day. It's not just what we do as an organization, but it's how we go about that work every day as we interact with one another to get it done. That's also important. And how we take care of our staff so that Jeffco isn't just one of the largest employers in Jefferson County, but the best employer in Jefferson County. Priority 3 is our operations, our foundation. We talked a lot about that tonight, which was great in terms of our Jeffco Horizon project, some of our capital investments. We really do want physical environments and operational services in Jeffco that contribute to instructional excellence and extraordinary student experiences. And we want to strategically deploy those resources to be efficient and effective with our resources, and make sure that where we're investing, where we're deploying resources, align to what is best for kids and what we want to get done for our students. And then finally, our communities, our legacy is has one goal, and you can see that in the yellowish orange, to really just create positive, mutually respectful, and trusting connections with our families and our community partners. We can't do this work alone. We want to do it in partnership with families and community partners, and we need to be strategic about how we do that. So, grounding in those goals, we have built a strong foundation over the last several years. I'm most proud of, and I said this today at our Central Services Town Hall, I'm incredibly proud of the stability that I've been able to provide for the district in terms of, I'm starting my 5th year as being a Jeffco staff member. I started in April of 2021, so this is my 4th full school year. But since I started in April, and it was the pandemic and COVID, I count those months as, I don't really count them as a year, but it is my 5th year of being part of Team Jeffco. And I'm really proud of that. And I think as a mom, we needed that. We needed some leadership that was at least stable and committed to the role. And related to you all, I mean, I feel very proud of the positive and productive board superintendent partnership that I believe we have. And I feel proud of the relationships that we have with one another and that you all have with one another. The work that you have done to make very difficult decisions and previous board members is courageous. And the work that you all have done to put governance structures in place for our district, I think, is work that is very important and will stick and will help create stability, not just hopefully in the superintendent and cabinet roles, but also in our board dynamics. So thank you for your commitment to that. And some other things that we have created in terms of a foundation: high quality math and literacy curriculum. We now have teachers who aren't figuring out what to teach every day, but how to teach with high quality materials. A footprint of buildings that maximizes resources for students. Our closure of 21 schools has been the hardest work that I've ever done, and many of you as well. I think it might be the hardest work I'll ever do. And I just want to acknowledge that while it was difficult, it's also been, I believe, a real positive step in the right direction, so that the students' enrollment in their buildings offers them high quality programming. We are starting the belief in the magic of middle school and reimagining high school, and flipping the switch on what I think is a deficit mindset around the middle years. We've studied with medical doctors the importance of brain development in the middle year programs and our middle year adolescent brains. We've talked just the other day about how students' brains change just as much in the middle years, early adolescent years, as they do birth to 5. And so we need to embrace that, recognize it, and build experiences in our middle schools that allow kids to explore where their passions are, so they're then ready to experience a thriving high school where they have an opportunity to explore career and other passion areas. We have implemented Healthy School Meals for All. Thank you to the state of Colorado for the funding to do that. And then you heard tonight that we have also started some pilot work in Jefferson. And so really excited for that. By the way, this little kid, I think he's in the Maple Grove cafeteria, because I just recognized the letters on around the thing. This is one of my favorite pictures. He's so cute. He's eating his peas. And I just love this little guy. So we did that. Healthy and equitable start times and transportation hub stops have created more efficiencies for our transportation services. We have data dashboards and enhanced cybersecurity measures. You're going to hear more about that when you see the 2.3 monitoring report in next month. We've created the FIRST team, HR partners, and our SAST partners who support our schools by articulation area and our families for when they just aren't getting quite what they need from their school. There's a place for them to go that can help them navigate a really large organization that at times can be daunting for families. We have a modern website platform. We brought back the A to Z thing. Everybody wants the A to Z back, so we brought that back. And in addition to features like the A to Z and much easier navigation and modernization of this website, we also have created an opportunity for it to be more inclusive for folks who need specialized circumstances when online and able to access certain components of what we provide there in terms of information. And finally, we have updated a lot of policies to align to statute, best practice, and the way we want to do things. And we'll call out Paula for thanking her on that big forklift effort a couple of summers ago with Stephanie Schooley, to really update and upgrade all of our board policies. So thank you. Now I'd like to just talk to you about a quote we've been marching around and showing people, and just let you read this quote for yourself. So I love this quote because I do feel in my personal life and especially in my professional life, I'm a learner. Nobody has ever arrived to their perfect self, or no organization has ever arrived to its perfect place. I do believe two things can be true at once. Jeffco can be a great school district, and Jeffco can be a better school district. And, we are a really special community, and we need to keep focusing on getting better and better over time, which is why we really have committed as a leadership team to doing the same work this year, but doing it better, and giving our employees the time and our schools the time and space to practice what we've asked them to implement. And so that's really important this year. And we're really, I think, all feeling grateful that we are in a spot where we get to do that as a leadership team, is give people the space and grace to get good at what we've already asked them to do. And so each year, our cabinet participates in an annual planning process around Jeffco Thrives. And we look at our progress toward the goals that we've set. we evaluate our strategies for the upcoming year, which is this year, the 24-25 school year, and we plan and we prioritize our projects. We are working diligently to stay focused. You know, there are so many things in Jeffco that can come at us that can take us off track. And we really want to keep our eye on the prize this year and make sure that we stay focused. And we've done a lot of work as a team to get there. One of the things we've talked about is having a clear 20-mile march. This is coined by Jim Collins, who you know I like. Focuses the mind because everyone on the team knows the markers and their importance, and they can stay on track. So we are chunking our work out so to tell people this is where we want to get next. This is where we want to get next, instead of just talking about the vision. I think you need both, a compelling vision, but also then small milestones to keep people going and to help people feel like they've accomplished something along the way. We practice this idea of visualizing sideways and downstream impacts. So when you have a 20-mile march, you have a tangible point of focus that keeps you and your team moving forward despite confusion, uncertainty, and even chaos, which we have none of those around here. And so if we don't consider the full impact to the organization, then what feels like a 20-mile march for one team will feel like a 100-mile march for the organization. And in my experience as a public educator, if you don't consider and stay focused and getting everybody on board with the right direction and the right actions to take, then unfortunately, the 100-mile march ends up at the school level, right? Where our educators, our principals are the ones that, well, this is my 20 miles, and this is my 20 miles, and this is my 20 miles from all these different departments who are well-intentioned, but honestly, all funneling into pressures on our schools. And so we have done an incredible amount of alignment to make sure that we are clear about what are we trying to accomplish this year, what do we want our principals to do, what do we want our teachers to focus on, and how are we going to give them the support to do that and not layer on more and more and more so that they're feeling like it's a 100-mile march. That's been big conversation at the cabinet level and big effort for all of us at alignment, which isn't always easy, right? Because we have big teams underneath in our central services, and they all have ideas and they all want to do really great work with schools. But we are really trying to keep people focused to give our schools the space they need to get good at what we've already asked them to do. And so we have this framework that we've used around thinking about system capacity for quality work. And we have some, we can't just say, oh, it's just the strategic plan. That's all we're doing. Because, by the way, there is work that happens on a daily basis that we have to deal with, and we have to deal with well. There are also smaller projects that we have to do. So right now we've bucketed our work as a frame into 4 categories. Our strategic plan projects are organizational priorities. They have organizational visibility. They're public. We are accountable to the public for these projects. They're cross-functional. So it's not just a project that Renee leads, right? Anything Renee's doing that also impacts Dave's team and Matt's team, and maybe even our operations team ends up in the strategic plan. It takes significant organizational capacity. So the Jeffco Horizons project is in the strategic plan. It's going to take significant organizational capacity. And it has significant downstream implications. The Horizons project is another great example of that. It will impact thousands of our employees in their day-to-day work. Then we have what we're calling team projects, which are basically smaller bites at the apple that we're trying on for size that are more innovative. It might need some cross-functional input. It might expend a team's capacity, but not necessarily the entire organization's. And it does have downstream impacts, but maybe only a smaller bit of a downstream impact. If the downstream impact is really positive and everybody's really excited about it, it may shift into a strategic plan project for the next year, for example. We also have our day-to-day work or organizational functions and how we respond to the day-to-day work. And we know that that is important. One of the hopes is that our strategic plan projects create efficiencies and improvements in our organizational functions and response. So if we can implement the Horizons project as a strategic plan project over the next 3 years in a really meaningful and productive way, then our day-to-day work it goes away and our day-to-day work becomes more efficient and effective. And so then also finally, our values-based culture. We can't just keep doing the work and talking about our strategies, because culture will eat that strategy for lunch if we don't also talk about how we treat each other and engage with one another as we do the work with one another. So this is a frame that our cabinet has been using to really organize ourselves and get ourselves focused on the work we all need to be doing in support of our schools. Jim Collins also says that the critical step lies in taking action, picking a good program, instilling the fanatic discipline to make relentless iterative progress, and staying with the program long enough to generate sustained results. I can't tell you as a public educator how many things have come and gone, you know, and it is sort of a bit of a dream for me to be in a position where I can say, we're going to stick with something. We're going to give people the time and space to get good at it. And we're going to monitor our progress over time. And so I'm just really grateful. I'm really grateful to be in this role, to be able to set that standard. And I'm so grateful to my team for having the willingness to collaborate with one another so that we can do that work and focus on what do our schools need to be successful. Here's the strategic plan. You've seen this slide many times with our priorities. And you'll notice our 24-25 major initiatives are not changed from 23-24. We have a major initiative around student outcomes and central services in support of student outcomes. In the central services town halls today, I explained to them, and I'll say it again, this central services phrase is important to me. We are not the Ed Center. We are not the district. We are not 581 Conference Place or Quail Street. We are not central departments. We are central services, and we are here to support schools. And I think we are shifting in that direction, and you'll see in this next slide what we're actually doing this year specifically to support student outcomes as a central services team. We submitted, surveyed our schools by department and asked them how we were doing last spring. We got those results. Our operations leaders were courageous, and they stood in front of all of our school leaders and said, thank you for the feedback. Here's what you said we're doing well, and here's where you said we can improve. So our operations leaders and our central services teams are creating plans to be responsive to the central services survey. We are refining our partner structures with HR partners. Our first team and other departments have been aligned to serve an articulation area. So principals and community superintendents know who to call for what in what department, and they have one point of contact. We want their time freed up to focus on instruction and teaching and learning and serving kids. And so this is an efficiency with our partner structures. We're going to modernize our systems through the Jeffco Horizons project. We will develop a workforce strategy. We've done a lot with hiring fairs and using platforms like Indeed to support hiring for this year. But there are, frankly, areas where we have to think outside the box, because just posting jobs everywhere isn't working. And so an example of this is out of our transportation team led by Mr. Gatlin, where we purchased the electric hybrid Toyotas. And I don't know, do you know how many people we've hired to drive those things? Okay. But it's like a couple dozen. Okay. 8 of our plug-in hybrids are actually transporting kids right now. So that's just an outside-the-box idea that we've got to start doing some innovative thinking in areas like transportation where we're struggling with our things. So thank you, Mr. Gatlin, for that effort. We need to do more of that. And so we're going to put together more strategic ideas this year as we go into the 25-26 school year. We need to prepare for structural adjustments to our district budget. You all know that we have been adopting deficit budgets for a few years. We've started to use some of that deficit as of last year. You'll see the audit in November for last year. We'll see and look closely at the monthly and quarterlies this year as we track and monitor. But we're probably over the next couple of years going to need to make some structural adjustments, and we'll be starting on that this year. And we need to engage in strategic facility master planning and try to build a central kitchen somewhere, sounds like, or at least explore the idea. And then, of course, major initiative 1 is the same as last year for our schools. We want you to work on a culture of instructional excellence and extraordinary student experiences. We have more work to do to get better at what we're already doing. Excellent schools don't leave excellence to chance. They make it strategic and intentional. And so here's what we're doing around instructional excellence. We are focusing on the instructional core. The instructional core is the interplay between students, teachers, and content. And at the center of that, it's what we're asking students to do, to learn. We talk a lot, and we've talked to you all, Dr. Kim calls it cognitive sweat. Right? How are we asking kids to learn in really active ways? And teachers, here's the bottom line about teachers. They love their kids and they want them to be successful, right? And so we need to really be conscientious about how we're putting some of the workload onto the brains of our students and expecting them to rise to the levels we know they're capable of. In addition, Renee's team has come up with this theory of action for instructional excellence, and you can read it. I'm not going to read it to you, but we basically have not changed this since last year, and we are deepening implementation with this theory of action. You know, we have commissioned a report on our opportunity gaps, and through that report, we have some positive news. We know that teachers mostly agree that their schools have visions and goals for students, that where there is a curriculum in place, task alignment for students is much stronger than where there's not, and overall, there's teacher buy-in to using district-approved resources. I will add to this one, this is especially true because I think teachers had a voice in the process of selection. And so we are committed to that because I think that buy-in comes when they're part of the process. We also know that leaders articulate clear school improvement priorities. Our leaders know what they need to improve on in their building. And we know much of that is focused on increasing literacy in math. And you're going to see next month our 1.1 monitoring report, which we're going to, by the way, get to you early tomorrow so you have more time with it because it's pretty robust. But you'll hear more about our progress and our areas of need in our literacy and math results. So we've been really explicit with our school leaders, our community superintendents, through Mr. Weiss's leadership, and our academic leaders on all of Dr. Kim's side of the house around what does it mean we want you to do this year. So you can't just say, oh, get better at what you're already doing. What does that really mean? What actions do we want you taking? The Opportunity Gap report, in addition to telling us all of the good things I just talked about that are in place in our schools, also told us that we need to work on these three areas: coherence, consistency, and belonging. And so we've been really specific with our school leaders and academic leaders to say, here's what we want you to do. For coherence, we want you to create conditions for teachers to internalize lessons, which basically means intentionally plan, using high quality materials. And we believe that will help us develop a common culture of instructional excellence. For consistency, we want our principals to monitor and strengthen the instructional core. So we want them to be in classrooms to see and provide feedback on that interplay, that instructional core between teachers, students, and content, and watch for student ownership of their learning and celebrate it when you see it. By the way, we doubled down on this monitor and strengthen the instructional core, be in classrooms, watching instruction is not about evaluation. It's not about going out and finding what's wrong or where is it not happening. It's the exact opposite. We want you looking in classrooms for awesomeness happening every day with kids. We want you to be in classrooms because just you being in classrooms sends a message about what is important, right? That you care about the experience of our teachers. You're high-fiving kids when you see them working hard. And it sends a strong message about what's important in terms of our kids' daily experience. And so that's going to be a big effort this year. Finally, in terms of belonging, developing a culture of belonging and deep student engagement is all about listening to student voice and using data to ensure that our students are connected not just to their experience in the hallways and the cafeteria and the playground, but their experience in the classroom, their learning experience. And so in encouraging and expecting our school leaders to really listen to their students and create structures to get student voice to the table. And so this is really explicit. We feel good about it, and we're going to support our school leaders and our community superintendents with aligning to this work this year. Here's the instructional excellence arc of learning, which you can take more time to look at. I'm not going to go over but you'll see alignment to our learners, our future in this. And this is basically the professional learning plan for our leaders. And finally, I just have a few quotes that talk about what inspired our principals at Leadership Launch. So I'll give you a minute to just read these quotes. This was part of the feedback that we received from leaders after the 3-day leadership launch in July. I'll just say the positive feedback about thank you for the space to go deeper has been exponential and very, very positive. Finally, I do want you to know, because we believe not only in doing the right work, but also measuring our progress at an aggregate level to make sure that what we're doing is working, and if it's not, adjusting our efforts. But these are the data points that help us measure progress towards our goals. And I'm really excited. I just read it for the last time today and said this is ready to go in the weekly board update. You're going to see a lot of information about what we believe are indications that we're on the right track in the monitoring report for 1.1. And I'm looking forward to having that dialogue with you all in September, but mostly this week. I'm just excited to get it into your hands. I think Dr. Kim and all of the team that helped her put that together, there's some good data in there about our progress. And there are also some challenges and areas where we're not, making the grade. And we need to be honest about that and talk about it. So we're looking forward to that conversation in September.
Say something. That was a little awkward pause, but yeah, I just want to lift up being at Leadership Launch was so interesting for me as somebody I've never been a school administrator. I was a teacher, but one moment really stuck with me, that when you said that we would be deepening our focus and not changing any of those objectives, the collective sigh throughout that entire room and the energy change that happened with that, it just felt like there was a huge breath of air and some tension sort of disappeared out of the room. So it was palpable the way that hit our administrators and our school leadership about having that opportunity to deepen focus. And I heard people talking about it in the hallway, when they walked out of the room. So I think that landed really well. And I think it leads to some stability and some willingness to, readdress maybe things that didn't get, we didn't hit a home run on some stuff the first go around. Now we get to try, we get a second chance and to try again and to apply some of the learning, which is really important for adults, not just for kids. Yeah, that's all I was going to say. Just thank you for all of that information. I'm looking forward to this year.
I'm going to kind of piggyback onto that. And in my years in the district, my experience was we are going to have this fantastic new thing. We're going to do it halfway, and then we're going to change. And so I know what a huge relief it is to be able to stick with something. And ever since I came onto the board, and Dr. Kim, you and I have had this conversation a million times, that it takes 3 to 5 years to see the results of a new program. And we never gave it a chance before. And having had a chance to have just a little sneak preview of some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, I really think that we're seeing the fruits of that labor. And no, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing is going to be perfect. And we need to look at it and have a growth mindset and say, okay, well, this is great. And we did these things fantastically, and let's celebrate that. And let's take a look at what we need to do in some of these other areas. But I am super excited by that. And I don't know about other members of the board, but I've gotten some communication, some recently, some over my years on the board, of we're not seeing immediate results. Obviously, this isn't working. You need to change. And this is going to be, I think, a really good opportunity for people to see that 3 to 5 year thing is a real thing and that it's working. The other thing that I'm hearing more recently is concern about the number of non-contact days that our teachers have. And I think that, I'm hoping maybe that some of the folks who have expressed those concerns are perhaps watching this meeting to understand how critical those non-contact days are to doing this deepening that we're talking about, to getting really good at what we're doing, to plan intentionally, to work together to make that happen, to give administrators the opportunity to sit with teachers as they plan, as they process. And so if they're not watching, but they're continuing to write, I'm hoping that we kind of continue to give that message about how really, really important that planning and training time is to implementing and to seeing the results that we are going to be seeing. The one thing I am curious about, and I think this is another thing that we're doing so right compared to when I was teaching, and that is the idea of going from being central administration to being central services. And there was always, for me anyway, sort of a sense that the Ed Center was not helpful. If they did anything, they got in my way. And we were never given the opportunity to give that feedback. Whenever we were doing a teacher survey about how do you feel, it was always just about our building. There was never an opportunity to say, here's what I need from central services, or what we considered central administration at the time. So I'm wondering, are we giving teachers that chance to give feedback about, do teachers in the classroom see the positive difference that's being made in central services?
Well, I know our central services survey went to school leaders. I do not believe it went to teachers. And Dr. Kim, you're more familiar with this teacher panorama survey, but I believe that is mostly about the building. So this is, I think, something that we can think about, Paula, and I appreciate that perspective.
I can share the categories that we ask. I would say there can definitely be some inference in the questions that are asked between that and the TEL survey, but the direct, do we ask them every year, how is this helping you and how is it not? I would say no, and it's probably a good question to be asked at this point in time to say how might we think about that?
I would just share that this is my, Director Kenworthy's, first start of the year in these roles, and it's really cool to see the excitement that comes with the start of a school year. And being at the leadership launch and being in different schools, as I know many of us are at this time of year, it's really fun to see all that energy and excitement. And one of my observations has been is the data that's coming out is really, really good. And these messages are really good. But I don't think our viewership on these meetings is as high as I wish they were. And so something for us, and I know, Dr. Kim, I've mentioned this in our one-on-ones, I'm really excited to get my hands on the data and being able to have talking points so that we can show our community. I think people love their schools. I really do. As a parent, I didn't truly understand what a central administrative services team did. I'll be 100% honest. And so I think being able, as we are talking about all this good in the district, is not only sharing, yes, scores are up, and they're up because we implemented curriculum and we gave teachers time to work together. And I've also heard about the contact days, and I don't know that there's just a great understanding for someone who didn't come from education why those are so critical. And so as we think about how we're telling stories, when we're out in the community, when we're doing all the things that will come, being able to have those talking points where we can talk about we're touching this many kids, and this is we're seeing great results because of our teachers, because of our school leaders, but also because of what the central services do. I think that's a really important story that we don't always tell to parents and community.
I think that your 1.1 report is going to give you many talking points, and if you need us to sift that even further to get you to a point of, here are my key points that I need to be able to have that conversation with, we will gladly put in the time to put that together for you. But they are in there, but I will acknowledge that it's about a 30-page report. So you do have to go through it and find those in ways that make sense for the questions you're getting asked. And like I said, if we can create you an executive summary, I'm happy to do that too, if it helps.
No, I'm excited to get the report. I think the answers will be in there. I just think as we are out in the community, it's important to pull those and speak to it.
This just got me thinking, like I love this approach, and I love that people are excited about it. Like the world I come from, we talk about failing fast and, being agile and design thinking. And then I'm a systems dynamic researcher. So in systems, like they're dynamic. So we have a lot of feedback loops constantly, to help us adjust and pivot and change. And all that language is a little bit different from, let's stay the path and dig deep. But I believe there's some merging of that. So I'm curious, like how we can stay the course and dig deep and also have sufficient feedback loops and ability to pivot and find quickly when we're doing something wrong and then adjust within that same model. So
my insight that I would offer you is a couple of places. I think number one of the places we recognize some value in that is doing things like pulsing surveys so that we're checking. So I'll give you an example. We have a high school that they use pulsing every quarter to check with kids to see what's their perception of how things are doing based on their goals and what they're trying to accomplish. From there, they host focus groups to have conversations at a deeper level with students to gain a little bit more insight. They take that, put it into an AI tool that now prioritizes that into 4, 5, 6 major categories that the staff takes and dissects and figures out what are kids telling us. What does that mean we now do? So there's some real-time feedback in the way that you're talking about. I would say we also, part of the reason why we use MAP at beginning, middle, and end is to give us the opportunity to look at that. And then we use formative assessments along the way to say, I taught this unit. Did kids get it? What did they get? What didn't they? So what am I going to do next? That happens in PLCs on a fairly regular cyclical basis. What I think we can do better and continue to improve upon is providing the kind of data tools that allow teachers to look at that and not have to use spreadsheets and paper tasks to figure out what those nuggets are, but our system will do that for us. And that's part of the work that I think you'll hear about in Monitoring Report 2.3 and the work that Jill Ibeck's team and I are working on together with our ALT team to make sure that we're thinking about those tools and asking teachers each time we iterate and give them a new tool, does this give you what you need? What else would you like it to do for you? And continue to do that because we agree with you. Some of the flexibility can happen in asking people what more do you need in order to do your best work. And we also have to have that elapsed time so people can get really good at their craft. And that there's really not a fast changing in developing a deep understanding of how to use curriculum really well to get more kids to levels of success. So we've got to be able to do both of those two things, right?
Mm-hmm. I want to add on because I think this is a great question. On one hand, we say, we're talking about Shannon Vigil, who's in our high school reimagined pilot at Bear Creek. And she showed her report card, her grandmother's report card, her report card, and her daughter's report card to her staff. And none of them have changed. And yet the world around us has changed so much. It's just a great example. It was a brilliant move on her part. And I think of just how to illustrate what we're dealing with and what we need to face. And so at the same time, I've also said, sometimes the most innovative thing we do in public education is actually do what we know works, like get the good teaching in the classroom or get the curriculum in place, right? We haven't had curriculum in forever until now, right? So it's this weird sort of, sounds like talking out of both sides of your mouth, but you're really not. And so I want to highlight one thing that your question makes me think of, Dr. Varda, is the AI pilots that we're starting. So we've been thinking about, we've made a lot of big at-scale change. a lot of foundational work, curriculum, start times, school closures that have impacted a lot, if not all, of the people in our community. And we've put in a lot of change management to get through that. And it's been really hard. And we've done most of it, I think, right and well, and some of it not so right and well. And we've learned from it. Right now, I think we're positioned in a great spot to be able to do some of the innovative fail fast things on a smaller bite of the apple. So we're doing AI tutoring with like 3 or 4 schools. Yeah, Conmigo. And we're going to see in the first 3 months, using this with kids, is it working? Is it not working? It's that more innovative small bite of the apple. It's hard in a legacy system like a school district to do anything like that at scale without it then also being the new thing we're going to do, right? And so I think we're trying to find that, what I like to call as the just right balance of getting the stuff we know works in place at scale for the majority of our kiddos, and then starting some of these innovative pieces where we can fail fast in a smaller, or hopefully succeed quickly in a smaller bite of the apple. So thank you. That's a good question.
Okay, I'll just wrap up here. Thank you for this. I really appreciate us getting the benefit of what you've been telling the leaders. So I have a comment and a question. The comment to Director Applegate's point of talking points for us in the community, it got me thinking too, if a lot of the perception of the school achievement is on CMAS scores and to a lesser extent MAP and whatever, I still think we need some explanation around explaining the scores, because throughout the state, they're awful. I mean, you keep thinking we should have 100% proficient. Yes. So showing or explaining why 43% is not horrendous, and why the growth score is really important and it really matters, those kinds of things. So again, just that background information for us to be able to discuss it. And then the question I have is probably a dumb one. What are SAST partners?
I think it's, Dave knows.
I don't know the acronym off the top of my head. That's the team that supports our financial secretary. Connected to Brent. A few of them, they go out to schools to support, especially new finance. Right now, they're supporting a lot of new financial secretaries with things like payroll and onboarding and things like that. But they also go out and support when, especially during budget season, with our financial secretaries supporting through that as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think it's like school administrative support team, and they do work within our finance arena, and they're bringing some efficiencies and systems to how those folks in our schools do their work.
Thanks. All right. Well, I think that's wonderful. This is a great start to the school year. Nice little, very efficient and very informative study session. So this does bring us to the end of today's agenda, and we will stand adjourned. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the board is a study session scheduled for 4:30 p.m. on September 4th here at the Ed Center. Good night.